Hello, this is the March video chat. Uh, this is when I'll do the stop killing games news first, and then just regular stuff after that. Um, I guess the first news. This is one I have to kind of bite my tongue on, but the the original big promotion that was supposed to happen sometime January is dead. And I apologize about this. I never would have announced anything on this, but I got a confirmation it was happening when I did. So I can't talk more about it right now. I probably will later. The whole situation kind of reminds me of when I had my kind of mess with Machinima with the contract and everything. But now, just by sheer dumb luck, we may have another new promotion. This one I'm directly involved with, and this one will be much sooner if it happens. Like within, probably within a week or two, I would think, before it starts. I don't know how big it will be, but it could be potentially big. So I'm not giving up hope yet on it. The the what the message I would send right now is we're at a point with the European Citizens Initiative that we either need like a lot of exposure or else it's not going to happen. Personally, I'm saying if we haven't cleared 500,000 signatures by about this time next month, I would consider it probably dead. Like the European Citizens Initiative. It's still a little too early for me to call it because there's other stuff brewing. Actually, just today, I talked to Tyler McVicker from Valve News Network channel. He's interested in having me on. I mean, I think that could help some, but I imagine there's probably a lot of crossover between our audiences. However, he's in touch with a lot of people in the games industry I wasn't aware of. So he's going to try and spread the message on this. Maybe something will come from that. So I keep my fingers crossed on that. This other promotion that may or may not be big, I don't know. But yeah, about a month from now is when we either need to be see if we cross 500,000, that opens a few more doors, and we might be able to get momentum off of that. If we can't do it by then, I think it's sunk. I mean, I won't give up on it 100%, but I'm just going to assume it's not going to make it past that point. Other things we did, I looked into a possible ad campaign, and the numbers weren't adding up for it because a big part of the problem is that this is considered political, even though we're not trying to get anyone elected or endorsing a political party. So that really limits where we can get ads on. And actually, I heard talking to a couple of game developers that they were saying for advertising, pretty much it has to be on YouTube or Twitch or it's almost worthless. Now, I mean, Meta was one of the main ones that we could still buy ads on, but I'm not sure how much reach that would have. I've heard for those, the click-through rate, it tends to range from 0.5% to, and 2.5% is considered very good. So for what it would cost and the numbers, it just wasn't making sense. I don't think that would close the gap enough. I mean, if we were like a lot closer to 1 million, yeah, I'd be doing everything, but I don't think it's going to make the difference. So my attitude is if we're going to lose on it, then I don't want to take people's money in the process, you know. And if it's really close, that's different because then that might be what makes the difference. But the general thing is, though, few more things brewing, but yeah, like about a month from now. And again, if we haven't passed 500,000, then I think it's sunk. And the irony to all of this is that at any time, pretty much a large streamer or YouTuber could spend 30 seconds saying, hey, there's this initiative in the EU that if you sign it, it looks like we'll get to keep our games. Just someone large saying that could potentially just turn this right around. So but I don't know how to reach people like that. So it's kind of it's a bit of a standstill in some respects. So yeah, we do have the power. However, we may not use it. Is what it's looking like. I'll see, but that's the main news. I'll have a lot more to say, I think, next month, depending on how it's going. Let's see. And I think that's it for, yes, for this. I guess before I get going, does anybody have any stop killing games questions? I can try to answer those quick. Otherwise, for the regular stuff, this is another one of those streams where I would just kind of prefer to hide if I could until the next game dungeon is done. Because I'm going at it steady, but this is a big game, it turns out, that I picked. But it's fascinating. It's another one where I'm just trying to decide like how much I want to throw out on it because there's so much to talk about on it. Let's see. And I'm not seeing questions, so okay, I guess we're moving on. So sorry, don't have a new game dungeon yet. It's coming as soon as it's done. I'm just working on it. And I'm spending most of the day working on it now. So I'd like to think it'll be done by this time next week, but it'll be close. Could be a little bit later than that. But yeah, it's yeah. I guess I gave a little bit of spoiler on another interview. It's going to be a first-person shooter RPG, so you can try and guess which one if you want. This is one I wasn't that familiar with, but man, it's a game I'm surprised exists. Like, so, let's see. I think that's it for now. Yeah, okay. And the plan is, as soon as I'm done with the game dungeon, I'll be working on the game dungeon follow-up episode, and then trying to get some smaller game dungeons in after that, and Freeman's Mind. Those are the immediate plans. So, yeah, okay. So I'll take questions or I'll go to the questions that have already been submitted, and then I'll take live ones at the end unless I just randomly notice them sometimes. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, the first question, they're saying, what technical or production aspects of your shows do you think viewers might not notice but take significant effort? I want to say almost anything that's not obvious. I mean, it's been mentioned before. Well, this is something where it's just kind of burning me that there must be a better way to do it, but having volume levels not be garbage, so I'm not going real loud and then it's just regular, then real loud or loud for some parts or hurts your ears. That's way too more time consuming than I like. And then just sometimes getting certain shots. I mean, just sometimes there's like one shot. It might take like 20 minutes to get to that point, but I really want to show that spot. I mean, just general significant effort. Oh yeah, actually a lot of the 2D graphics, at least for me, can be pretty time consuming. I mean, sometimes just a chart with like lots of data on it, that could take me, I mean, depending on everything I'm pulling up, that could take me 1 or 2 hours to make one of those. That was also one of the reasons that I'm not thrilled about, I have mixed feelings about the Game Dungeon Awards because those always take me time. That said, the next episode will definitely have them. There's real obvious contenders for it. The one graphic, I'm not sure how I'm going to get. I have to figure it out. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I guess. But yeah, it's audio and it's sometimes like audio and just 2D graphics inserts tend to take up a lot more time than you think. Are the two biggest ones. Let's see. What single video game item would be the most expensive or valuable if it existed in the real world? Well, I mean, gosh, that's pretty open-ended because, I mean, I mean, video game items can do as much as like change existing reality. You know, so it's hard to put a value on something like that. Like if you have something like a time machine or something, the or you know, raising the dead. Like this doesn't Phoenix Down do that in the Final Fantasy games or something? Now there's another debatable one, but an obvious one that I felt they made a joke about it in the game, but I felt like, yeah, that would be pretty accurate when the portal gun in Portal, once you get the second portal enabled, they're saying now this is now worth the combined value of insert your hometown here or something like that. Because the portal gun, it would not only enable very far transportation, I was thinking it could potentially that could potentially kick open like interstellar travel if you enable it just right. You know, so what you do is you hop to whatever visible point you can get, but we might be too far to hit any sort of planet. Yeah, so if we hit a star, that wouldn't work. But I mean, we could definitely look if we have portal guns. I think it actually is plausible to be able to colonize the solar system at that point. But another aspect of the portal gun is its unlimited energy. I think I've mentioned this before because, you know, if you aim it at the top and aim it at the bottom, well, then just gravity accelerates to the point of terminal velocity. But if you did that in a vacuum, then, I mean, I'm not sure what the I'm not sure what the physics on it for how fast something would travel in a vacuum where there's just no end to gravity, essentially. So, I mean, I guess you can't accelerate, I guess, approaching the speed of light or something. So, yeah, the portal gun would be incredibly valuable, just in many, many ways. So, but there might be, again, video game items, there's just, I mean, there's just so many options that, like, just, again, you can swap out this universe for another for some of them. So it's kind of, that becomes kind of a philosophical question as to, like, what does valuable mean, you know? Okay, this one is kind of tricky for me. They're saying, which 5 nonfiction books would you say are essential for understanding the world? Just really curious which books shaped your worldview and gave you new complex ways of looking at things. Well, and somebody gives 5 examples, and they're all fiction. That said, I don't read tons of nonfiction books. I'm generally reading fiction, but I can give some themes, and I can list a few books. Most of these books, there are probably better examples than what I have, but they were some of the more well-known ones for explaining something. One of which, and again, you know, for understanding the world, that's also kind of interpretive because, you know, are you looking at the laws of physics or human interaction or psychology, that sort of. So that's interpretive. I kind of interpreted this as kind of like long-term information, maybe not lots of people are aware of, that I think are important for a lot of people to be aware of. One, I might be mixing up books, but the premise of this book was that the geography of, you know, where a country or a populace is settled and forms determines so much about how its history is going to play out, like just to a staggering degree. Again, if this isn't the book, it could be another one I read, but this is one I remembered. Guns, Germs, and Steel talks about that concept where, like, you could almost be a Nostradamus for what's going to happen to a lot of societies if you really understand, like, the geography of where it was settled and that sort of thing. I thought that was good to know. Another one, this is one that needs to be updated most likely, but a lot of it rings true, is manufacturing consent. And that kind of explains on how bias in media kind of works, like mainstream news and that sort of thing, how they'll want you to pay attention to certain topics and not to others, and some are elevated, and there's like a whole system kind of reinforcing that. It's kind of like invisible influence. Um, let's see, that's one. This is another one where there probably are better books than this, but what I remembered was The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History. That one's just kind of covering, I think it's written from a biologist. That one's kind of covering how we're kind of flirting with extinction for the human race and are collapsing the ecosystem. Honestly, I saw a YouTube video that summed up a lot of that better maybe than that whole book, but I feel stupid I can't find it. I'd have to look through a lot of emails again. I forgot the title of it, but that's another concept I think is just totally, it's underemphasized. This one isn't a book exactly. This was a study. Next one is a study that was done by MIT. This is another one that needs to be updated or kind of looked at. And I think there are books that have looked at it. Are The Limits to Growth. This is a study done by MIT, I think in 1972, where they looked at projected these models to see, what resources we might run out of, or like what's likely to happen to the environment, that sort of thing. Plugged in all these variables and came up with all these different models for what life or civilization might look like, decades down the line. And they had different names for some of them. Some are if we like really try to like scale back our pollution, or some if we accelerated it. And my understanding is we've been following extremely closely the business as usual model, which I think shows us having just like major collapse by 2040. So that's something worth, again, that's something I think is underemphasized, that, we're kind of on borrowed time with our resource usage. It's not sustainable. So I think that's something that needs like way, way more attention than it's given, but we're probably going to have to do things the hard way. I wasn't sure what to put for others, but I guess another one, I guess I don't have a book title, but like some themes I thought were worth looking into was that how basically just an incredible portion of modern society is essentially built upon oil. And that's a finite resource we can make more oil, but nowhere near on the scale that we do it. And that's, the analogy I've heard is it's basically spending your inheritance on things. So because we've inherited, tens of thousands or millions of years of stored energy, essentially. We're using it all, and, we're using it like there's no tomorrow, and that eventually catches up with us. So I'm saying they still find tons of oil, but we use like a small lake's worth of oil every day. So it's, even literal tons of oil doesn't mean that much. I guess this one was, this is another one that isn't a book exactly, but it was an article that I thought was helpful. I think I mentioned this one before. 20 concepts I wasn't taught in business school, except he only did a part 1 and never finished part 2, but he has important stuff on there. It touches similar concepts, but another core concept, I'm not sure what the best book on it would be. Actually, I think that's one I need to read. It's something like it's like the Everything Crisis or Peak Everything or something. But a lot of what in our entire lifetimes we consider normal, like, growth and industry and development, really aren't normal, looking at like the entire, like, duration, or at least on the scale that we do, at the entire duration of humanity. And we're living in just kind of an anomaly through our entire species, through how much we expand. And so much of our culture and society and civilizations founded upon that. So that's something. Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't think as a collectively we're gonna get it without learning the hard way. But I feel like that's something that would be better to know. I guess a couple other themes I had. See, the thing is with nonfiction books with me, if I'm really want to know a lot about a different topic, I'll dive into them. But I usually just try to get enough information that I feel like I can kind of get a grasp of the concept and see like how it applies to my life or things I want to think about. And I may not need to know every last detail of it or that sort of thing in order to make more of a personal judgment. So it depends on like the practicality and how many details I want to know. So, I mean, I've said before, I tend to want to just go to the fun stuff. That's why I tend to spend more time on fiction. But one thing I think is underemphasized is, I guess, I guess one way to put it is like psychopaths in society. I've noticed there can be a common trait among many, many people to kind of just assume the person you're talking to is a reasonable human being and like they have the same, on some level, they have the same conscious, they have a conscious of right and wrong. And I think it'd be helpful if it was more widely understood that no, some people really don't. Like they really don't. And it's almost like it's for some people, it's almost more, you'll get much more consistent and better understanding if you look at them like vampires than people for moral issues, you know. And I really think that's like a critical flaw of humanity, that we don't like better identify, you know, psychopathy or to some extent sociopathy for people who are in positions of power, you know. I mean, if you're a psychopath but you're a DJ, well, that's not really a problem. You know, you're not ruining people's lives based on your position, you know. Or, but if you're, I don't know. I think that's underdeveloped and not looked at enough. And let's see, did I have anything else? I guess those. Oh yeah, well that was another thing that's. I guess from what I've noticed from a lot of interactions that this is something that should be really taught more in schools, but good luck with that. Is just basic logic and critical thinking. I think is just it's almost non-existent from at least my experience in the education system. So I feel like that's something that could benefit a lot of people. Just real basic understanding that, you know, kind of look for signs of manipulation or just ways of presenting information that are misleading or, you know, sound correct, but they're not. I feel like there's so little of that. Just looking online for starters, but I mean, just on all kinds of topics, and just some really basic classes of that, I think could potentially help a lot of people. But let's see. I think that helps kind of inoculate society against, I guess, malicious manipulation, I guess, or coming to bad conclusions on things. I mean, it doesn't protect against everything, obviously, but there's just so many basic things. Like I mentioned before, whenever there's a controversial issue that I know nothing about, I try to look at what each side is saying and then think, okay, well, if and then think, okay, well, if this side has these 3 points sound really damning towards the other side, what's the other side say about them? And sometimes they have good counter. It's like, oh, okay, they misrepresented that side maybe. Or sometimes they have no counter to them and just prefer to focus on something else. So I'm thinking, oh, well, that looks bad. So it's that's hardly foolproof, but it's like a good starting point, you know. Let's see. Okay, so next question. That was a more serious one. Monolith Studios has been closed. What is your favorite Monolith game? I think I'd have to go with Fear. I've only played a little the original. I played the expansions are pretty similar. I've played a little bit of Fear 2. I wasn't quite getting into it, but I wasn't hating it, so that's one I need to come back to. I haven't played Fear 3. I think my second favorite, okay, I feel dumb, but I honestly cannot remember if I've played Aliens vs. Predator or Aliens vs. Predator 2. I played through all of one of them, but I can't remember which one. I would recognize it if I started looking at footage and then or see certain levels. It would probably come back to me, but that would probably be my second favorite. That one, you know, that one, not only was that creative and interesting, but in terms of just, I know some people play games because they're always looking for like fresh gameplay concepts. That's one that had a lot of freshness in it for a first-person shooter, and sadly still does, because the way you play each campaign is just very different. You know, with the Predator having, you know, different vision modes and the alien being able to crawl on the ceiling and melee only, and it's, and I was thinking that's those games have more variety for just the gameplay style than most first-person shooters I can think of, like even now. So I'm not necessarily someone who has to have something new and fresh in terms of gameplay. I just want something well done that's a fun experience. But if you're a first-person shooter fan that does want novelty and you haven't played those, you really should. You know, a lot of people like No One Lives Forever. I think they're good games. I'm just not crazy about them because I'm not like heavy into the like 60s spy kind of motif. But I mean, they're good. They're very solid games. If I did like that theme a bunch, then I could see those becoming some of my favorite games. But yeah, I mean, they're very solid. They're just not quite to quite my preference. Let's see. Okay. Who would you rather have as your roommate? The weird merchant guy from Yet 3, the ultimate ghost ball beast from Bip Bop 2 and 3, Harry Buster, or Bob from Phantasmagoria 2? Well, I feel like the merchant guy and the ball thing are in similar territory, where that it could be fine or they could be complete freaks and a nightmare to be around. Like, I could see it going either way with them. Bob would be not great. He wouldn't be the worst roommate, but he wouldn't be great because he would probably do lots of things like, you know, leave all the dishes, leave a mess everywhere, like give you crap about things, maybe late on rent, just to see what he'd get. He'd do a lot of passive aggressive stuff, but I mean, we could maybe work something out. I think I'd have to go with Harry Buster just because I could probably end up wealthy being roommates with Harry Buster, because I could ask him like, oh, what sort of stocks should I invest in? Like, oh, is there paperwork I need to know? And he would probably tell me, and it would probably be in the form of a sing-along, but I could probably work with that. But I mean, from the game, he looked like he would be fine with sharing his knowledge. So, but I think Harry Buster would be easily the most beneficial out of all of those. Because, and if, yeah, he looked like he could be reasoned with, you know. So if things got too nuts with the singing, you know. Yeah, I think he would give me lots of helpful financial info, and I'd be, a couple months with him, I might be set for life. So, let's see. What do you find yourself taking pictures of the most? What has been your preferred method of photography throughout the years? I barely take any pictures at all. I mean, I've taken some pictures when I narc on some houses that are spewing out brown smoke. That's like the lignite that they're burning. That apparently there's an authority you report that to. I don't know if they do anything, but sometimes it's just like you're practically choking on it. It's so bad. There's like this whole haze. Um, I mean, what else have I taken pictures of? I've sometimes taken pictures of trails I've walked down for somebody else who wanted to see them, but I take almost no pictures at all. I mean, I just used an old, Jesus, probably like 20-year-old camera now or sometimes phone now that I have a little bit more modern one. But yeah, the thing of pictures is, like, I mean, a lot of them take them of each other for like a photo album or something, but I'm this might surprise you considering how many old games I played, but I'm really not big into nostalgia because it's like if you look at old photos of yourself, it's like, yeah, there I am, and it's just like, well, those days are gone. So, and if they're good, then you're kind of sad about it, and if you're bad, and if they were bad, then you don't really want to be reminded of it. So I'm just, I don't know, I don't dwell much on that sort of thing. So yeah, I barely have any photos. Let's see. If you could have any power from a game, what would you pick? Oh, well, chat, feel free to make suggestions also. I mean, this is kind of a cheap choice, but I mean, I guess I'd go with immortality. And from, was it Chakan the Forever Man? He has that. And I mean, there's probably other games that have immortality as like their power. I just wasn't. That was the only one I could think of offhand. I might be saying it wrong. Yeah, it's like Chakan the Forever Man or something. Yeah, I think in the game it's a curse, but yeah, I was thinking with immortality. I've heard you don't want it. That like, well, I can think of two things that you really wouldn't want it in a sense. That I've heard if you were immortal, the odds of getting swallowed up by an earthquake go up significantly over a long enough period of time. And like, yeah, that would suck. So you would, I guess, need to have something on you that could let you dig your way out. And the other thing, if the human race extincts itself, that wouldn't be good. But even then, on a long enough time scale, um, I mean, I guess you'd have the sun goes nova and the Earth can't sustain life anymore. But I guess that would be a long-term goal, is to try to get a generation ship off the ground. If I was immortal, I think I could do that. I'm not seeing much. Okay, well, so they're saying games have all powers, like comics, to pick any. I'm not seeing many suggestions. Maybe there's less people in the chat this time. But yeah, I guess I'll go with immortality. That seems, and I'd have to think even more about long-term things, but. Let's see. Do you have a game you go back to play just because you have good memories of, or know that you can enjoy and help you relax? I mean, maybe, but I'm kind of not particularly. I mean, I'm sure I could pick a game I've played that I'd want to replay, but I kind of like to kind of see ones I haven't seen before, and then go back. Oh, sorry, go back to ones when my memory's really hazy on them, and I kind of wanted to see them again because it's just so blurry. It's almost like it is a little bit new. or the other reason is I want to replay some games, especially if I can get them working at stereoscopic and VR. If they had real good environments, I kind of want to, see what it's like to actually be there. But there are so many games. This is a question I probably would have had a more solid answer for, maybe like the 90s. But there are so many games now that it's just, you could just play it. I could play a new one every day and not run out for probably a couple of years. So it's, I mean, for ones I'm interested in. It seems like a better use of my time to just kind of move on until I hopefully find the next sort of personal classic for me. Let's see. Looking back through your old videos, you seem more crass and vulgar than you do now. Is there anything that changed regarding that? Or is that a shift in how you publicly portray yourself? Or something else? Or your persona? Well, I mean, I don't have a persona for just the video chats, but for Freeman's Mind, yeah, that's probably where it got. I'm not, in real life, I'm not typically that crude or vulgar. However, the overriding factor in the videos is how good is the joke. Like, if the joke is better by being more crude, then I'd prefer to do it. So that's part of it. So that might have to do with me not having done enough Freeman's Mind lately. However, that said, there is a little bit of a chilling effect because, look, Doom Guy's Mind got demonetized. So it's like, it makes me think twice more. It's like, okay, well, how good is this joke? Is it worth like just losing all monetization on the video? And it's like, well, so YouTube has definitely played a hand in that. It all just depends. Like, it really just depends on like how funny the joke is what it comes down to. So, and like probably the most crude stuff would be, Freeman's Mind or that Doom Guy's Mind episode I did. So, I mean, if it's still really funny, I'll do it. But, yeah, maybe YouTube has had a bit of an unconscious effect on me with that. And I will say, for the Stop Killing Games campaign, I'm trying to tidy up myself to some extent for public appearances because I'm just trying to get the message across to get signatures. But, let's see. Yeah, so they're saying, Ross, we need a game dungeon video. Oh, I haven't even played Disco Elysium. Well, don't worry. You're going to get a lot of things to look at in the next game dungeon. There's a lot in it. There's a lot in the game and the episode. It's a game, again, it's a game I'm surprised exists the way it is. Okay, more questions. What do you think of Stanley Kubrick's works? Well, I mean, I haven't seen all of his movies, but he's obviously made really incredible movies. I tend to either like I guess some of the ones I have seen. I think out of the ones The Shining would probably be my favorite. That might be my favorite horror movie, period, because it's just incredibly well done. Next favorite would have to be, or tied would be, Doctor Strangelove. That one's it's just a really solid movie. That's one of those movies that it's hard to do, where it's like speaking to some truths, but it's also farcical, and it's like simultaneously funny and serious, and that's a very tricky kind of movie to make. It takes a lot of talent to do something like that. 2001 has amazing scenes, but overall, it's a very slow movie. I think at the time it was kind of. I think 2001 is a movie that kind of. That they were showcasing the special effects more, because it was the special effects were mind blowing when it came out, but now in just terms of like movie pacing, it's very slow, but it's good. But I've Eyes Wide Shut. That's one I've seen. That one's all right. Not quite my thing as much, but it's definitely intriguing. Full Metal Jacket is one where like the first half of the movie is just amazing. like the training, and then the second half is just kind of okay. It's good. So it's kind of mixed. Yeah, because Full Metal Jacket, like the training portion is just amazing. That's a really good movie. But probably some other. I'm trying to think if I've seen others, but yeah, no, he's made very good movies. So it says they've never seen Full Metal Jacket. Well, if you like military movies, it's a must watch. That's how I would describe it for Full Metal Jacket. Like it's, uh, yeah. I mean, yeah. Like I almost think of. I like the first half of Full Metal Jacket more than Apocalypse Now, but Apocalypse Now is better from beginning to end, in my opinion. I tend to think of those in like similar categories. So kind of like AC/DC current. Full Metal Jacket has higher highs, but Apocalypse Now is more consistently good, I think. Let's see. But yeah, if you haven't seen that, if you like military movies, that one's mandatory, for Full Metal Jacket. So. In your interview with Chud Logic, you mentioned that you played Outer Wilds, but on the website is still unrated. Yeah, I'm behind dozens of those. I need to update the list too. They're saying, they're wondering what I thought of the game. I guess I would put, for me, I would probably put a pass on that one if I was to rate it. I played an hour or two of it. Okay, first off, I'll just get this out of the way. Yes, the writing is very brilliant. It definitely is. If you're talking about like games that make you think, like it's definitely way up there. So I'm not discounting any of that. But again, I might be a little too lowbrow for that to be my kind of game. I did like the concept of going to like other mini planets near you and solving puzzles there. I enjoyed that part. The parts I didn't like, honestly, some of the art direction, like the lighting just kind of had this blah feeling to me. Again, it's not about the fidelity, it's about like the color usage and that sort of thing. That kind of killed some of the mood for me. And the way it starts off with the other aliens, I was struggling to think of how to explain it, but like the vibe they give isn't quite my thing. And the way I came up with explaining it is sickeningly wholesome. Like, if something's like they're trying to make, like, I'm not big into like cutesy games, and it wasn't exactly that, but it's just like everybody's living in perfect harmony and we all care about each other and things are so good. And, let's talk about all these relationships with each other. I'm not here for that kind of thing. And there was more of that than I liked at the beginning of it. Also, it is a time loop game, but I didn't like that I guess with time loop games, if you're going to have hard puzzles, I kind of want to wait well, maybe you could pause it, I guess, but I didn't like that combined with the sort of lunar, if I'm not mixing things up in my head, the lunar lander style landing of the spaceship that you had to get just right while you're on a timer. And then you have to hurry and figure out if you've seen everything and then come back there. So, I don't know. It wasn't quite my thing, but, and in all honesty, I got a little lost as far as what was happening plot wise with what was it, like a black hole or the phenomena that was causing the time loop. I got a little lost in it, but I could see where this would just be complete pay dirt for you if you do have more like of an advanced physics knowledge or that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm in no way trying to say like, oh, the writing wasn't good. No, not at all. in terms of just in terms of concepts, it could be one of the most brilliant games made in terms of the writing, but it was a little bit, wasn't quite what I'm after, or the way that it was all presented. But yeah, so I mean, I played it for like an hour or two and then watched the playthrough of the rest of it. So, uh, somebody's saying they don't see me playing No Man's Sky. The thing I want, here's what would get me to play No Man's Sky. I want, maybe it already is there. I kind of like some story kind of tying it together. You know, like if it's just a sandbox going to different worlds and then that's it, it's like it feels a little hollow to me somehow. Whereas I want, like, okay, we're uncovering some mystery, then we have to search some worlds to find another clue, and then we get deeper into the mystery and that sort of thing. And if it's like a good story using that as the frame, using that kind of stuff as the framework, then yeah, I think I'd love something like that. But if it's more just kind of sandbox stuff, it's like, I don't know. I like having goals and plot and that sort of thing for a lot of games. So. Not all games, but then if it's a game with like no plot or just the only goal is like beat the level or something, then I have to really like the gameplay, you know. So, but I don't know, just having something at the end of it, it does a lot more for my personal satisfaction in playing games. If you were reborn into the Warhammer 40K universe, which faction would you choose to be born into? Well, I think I'd prefer to be human, so I think that maybe not, but I think that pretty much leaves yeah, I prefer to be human and not consumed by chaos. So I think that pretty much only leaves the Imperium, doesn't it? I mean, there might be some other fringe factions that I know of that are human but aren't part of the Imperium. I guess there's like some like sort of isolated worlds that they got colonized like thousands of years ago, but the Imperium sort of lost track of them. I guess you could have ones like that. But I mean that's the main faction. It's the factions. Whole lot of them are racial, you know, in the Warhammer 40K universe. They found a Telegram channel with my videos. Is it yours? No, that's not mine. But that's not a big deal, especially if they're trying to spread the word and stop killing games. So. Okay, someone's asking if I ever played the My House WAD for Doom 2. I haven't. Several people have mentioned that, and I heard some people say, like, I'll probably end up hating it or something. I'm sure it's something that has, yeah, so they're saying unraveling layers of madness and alternate reality games. That's not necessarily my thing. It's like, I kind of like some anchoring, and an alternate reality game, it's like, I don't know. I could be getting lazier, but that, to me, that's not, I don't really have the thrill of like having to look up stuff that basically requires you to kind of do, unless it's like fairly obvious, like, you know, like if there's like a puzzle and you can tell this is about the periodic elements or something, like, okay, I can look up the periodic elements or something like that. But if it's like some, you know, like half the stuff in the Secret World or the alternate reality games where you have to like look up this, I don't know, the history of some house from the 1800s and then make some connection that they're talking about this particular tenant of it. Like, I don't know, the stuff that is just a big stretch that, you know, you'd have to be, it would probably take, if you were locked in a cell, it would probably take you days to figure out the answer. I'm too busy for that. So, and just total madness isn't actually my thing. I kind of like context with my madness, you know. So, But I mean, maybe I'll do it. I'm sure it has lots of twists. That's I've just my impression from how people are talking about it and how, especially trying to get streamers to play it. I'm sure it has a lot of twists. So, I mean, to be honest, I'd probably play it until it's just kind of feeling more like work than a game, and then I probably want to would give up on it. So that probably wouldn't be very satisfying to watch if I was doing it. So again, there are so many games now. I've gotten picky, but you'd think I'd run out, but I don't. So favorite metal riff. I had to think about it, but for the riff, feel free to make suggestions because I'm certain there could be songs I'm forgetting about. But the one that just came to mind was Three Little Pigs by Green Jelly. You know, the dun 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 dun. Like, so that one just it gets in your head. It's a good riff. So I'll have a link to that in the description here. In that little drum article, Three Little Pigs. So I was saying, still waiting for the movie. Yeah, I'm not. Again, I said this last time, but I'll say it again. Plan right now, just kind of do unless something big comes along that I'm needed, just kind of do skeleton crew publicity for the initiative, stuff that like will kind of progress it forward, and get next game dungeon, get a couple other game dungeon stuff, get Freeman's Mind, then it's to the movie. So, or then I'm spending months working on the movie, or just about. The whole campaign screwed me and sent me, like the original plan. Well, I say the original revised plan was that I would have been working on the movie about this time last year, and then the campaign just torpedoed all of that. So, like, I want to get the campaign to a point. Again, I'll push it if, like, things like interviews or just showing up for discussions, talking about it, that's relatively easy. I can do that. But I wasted a lot of time looking into the ads, like, this month. That just, because I was looking more and more into it. I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to have to, like, write a script out to have a video, because video ads are more effective. And then I'm thinking, well, I really have to get my ducks in a row for having this more polished and presentable. I might have to find editing help for this. Or more importantly, I'm going to have to find help to get graphics made for it. And like maybe find music for it. And like my contacts are kind of eroded that I'm not sure who to reach out to on things that I'll get a response. So it's like I have to start from ground zero. That's actually a lot of work and time consuming for me to spearhead all of that. And that's saying nothing of like the potential like legal liability, or if how this connects to the initiative that we have to like declare money that's being spent on it. See, that would just be for the trial run. And if the trial run went well, then I might have considered doing fundraising for it. And then I have no idea where to start with the legal liability of that. So that takes up so much time and research for me doing that sort of thing. Look, that's honestly my Achilles heel, is figuring out like financial laws and paperwork. Like I think I mentioned before, the first year I came here in Poland, I had to pay double taxes despite spending weeks trying to research how to not pay double taxes for like on self-employment tax. And it turns, I didn't find the answer out until late, like the next year, only because I got lucky and was able to call through the IRS. And I asked, how do you declare a totalization agreement between the two countries so I don't have to pay self-employment taxes twice? And it turns out there was no form for that. The agent said, just write it on the form, what you're doing. So it's like, okay. Because I swear, at that time, that information was on the internet nowhere. This was back when Google search wasn't garbage either. So But point is, like, this just, I can do accounting. That's not a problem. But just figuring out what laws apply and what needing to know exactly every little bit detail of stuff, it's just, that's such a time sink with me personally. Like, I think I've compared it before. It'd be like expecting a dyslexic person to write a book report on War and Peace or something like that. You know, that's about how much difficulty I have trying to figure out like which tax laws apply and how you're supposed to do it and like what all the different terms mean, because it's so obfuscated. So, let's see. Okay, next question. Yeah, I forgot. So anyway, but like here's something you can hold me to on the movie. I'm going to spend months on it this year, and it's probably going to upset people because they're waiting on more videos. That's why I'm trying to get. I've already set them back so much with videos on the damn campaign, so that's why I'm trying to give them a few more first, and then I'm gonna just spend months, maybe not consecutively, but this year on the movie, and get ahead on things. So you can hold me to that. You can hold me to that. Okay, and the question is, there's somebody saying, do you feel like Pirate Software was unfair in covering the Stop Killing Games campaign? Well, yes, he misrepresented it. He said what he did. Okay, I don't know how, even now, I don't know how intentional this was. Because it could just be that he believes it, and which case it wasn't dishonest, or he did this totally on purpose. But here's the thing. He showed the initiative, and that text is in black and white and says we want games in a reasonable state, without having to, reasonably playable state at the time of shutdown without having to connect to third parties or the wording, something like that. So he can't change what that is. So what he did was change in his words what Stop Killing Games is about. So no, what's in the initiative is our goal. So by him saying that, no, this is really about single player games with DRM attached to them and like converting multiplayer to single player games. So if you use that metric, well, then it looks like our initiative is reckless because he's trying to change what our entire initiative is about in his words. And he's inserting stuff we've never said. So yes, that's totally misrepresented. And see, that's where, and then he made that point about how the wording being vague. Well, yes, if you have a different goal for it, of course it's going to be vague because it's not covering the goal you made up, But I think the other thing he misrepresented, I know why he didn't do it, but because it would make him look bad, but he misrepresented where he was coming from on this. Because he said repeatedly in the videos before the one on his YouTube, the videos he deleted from his YouTube channel, that that this is not a problem. The games are supposed to die, or something. I might be paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. So, in other words, he's entirely against this ideologically, what we're doing. So the person who has the exact opposite stance on this, of course, finds problems with it. But then he left all that out of his main video that he left up, then that got over 1 million views. So yes, he was unfair in covering it. And yeah, I did see one comment that I liked. It was something like, complains that we haven't reached out to developers. And then next step, refuses to talk to anyone in the initiative. So yeah, he made it kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, we'll talk to developers. I mean, even if you hate it, I will give a bit of a caveat though, for me anyway. If you hate the initiative and you like want to debate it, I kind of want an audience of some size for that, because I won't hide it. I'm going to be doing this to campaign. So, I mean, yeah, and hey, that raises the stakes a little bit, because if you if you think it's stupid, then you have the opportunity to make me look bad and hurt the campaign that way. But if you can't do that, then it's going to come out in my favor. So it kind of raises the stakes by having more of an audience. But because I think the strength of the argument stands on its own. But yeah, when the strength of the argument stands on its own, yeah, that was sneaky. It's change what, yeah, it's essentially a classic straw man. Change what you're saying the opponent is about. Yeah, so if you can't defeat your opponent's argument, you lie and say that your opponent's argument is about something else. Yeah, that I don't have an easy counter for that, because especially when you won't talk to the other side. All right, I got sidetracked. So he's asking if I've been to the cathedral that's inside. Okay, Vilichka? Salt mine near Krakow. No, I haven't been to Krakow. We've talked about going to a salt mine, but we haven't done it. I believe that the misunderstanding comes from your belief that live service games are a scam. Okay, well, no, I think live service, if you have no end of life plan, I think they're a scam. So yes, I'll stand by that. Or okay, since this thing, there's always nuances. If you have no end of, well, no, I guess that's an end of life plan. If you're telling people exactly when it ends, like again, World of Warcraft does do that. Even in my games as a service as fraud video, I said not fraud, because they're telling you when it ends. So I still don't like it, but because it destroys the game, not having an end of life plan, but they're being honest about it. So yeah, I mean, just being, if they had an end of life plan, then no, I don't think they're a scam. I think they can be predatory, but it kind of depends a lot on the game. I think they can be really hard on developers too, because they're under pressure to make constant new content. But I mean, I don't think they're a scam other than not telling you when they end, or not having an end of life plan if you bought them the same as you bought a copy of them, the same you would as any other game. Then yes, I do think it's a scam, because then it flies in the face of almost all consumer law. Yeah, that's something else I'll lean into. Like, people will say, like, oh, gamers are being entitled. You're damn right. I feel entitled to keep something I've bought, or if I'm renting it, I feel entitled to know how long I get to rent it. Because what Games as a Service is doing, it's doing neither of those. And it's trying to kind of, it's honestly, it's playing games with existing commerce and existing consumer law. And yes, I think that is a scam. And I care about it because it ends up destroying the games. So, and vast majority of criticisms I've seen against it, they always get some detail off about it. Either I haven't communicated well enough, or they haven't thought it through enough. So. Okay, more of the submitted questions. How did you originally discover Binster and his music? Using the music in your videos is how I discovered that I liked his work. I found it from a game trailer. For the game was, I think they renamed the original title was Don't Be Patchman. But I think it got renamed to Patchman and the Red Circles or something like that, which I still need to play. It looked interesting. Let's see. So, well, that's a good question. Well, okay, well, no, there's two. Okay, well, I'm drifting into live ones, but I should probably get back to somebody saying, anything new giving you existential dread? No, not really. Just basic mortality. Has there ever been a point in your life where you felt like your potential was being completely wasted purely due to lack of ambition? No. Like, it's more like, not from lack of ambition. It's the opposite tends to happen. That I tend to burn myself out and screw up other things because I got too ambitious with something else. I mean, most of most of what's keeping me from my potential is just taking on too many things. So they need to cull more. Let's see. Okay. Do you have an idea for an entirely new genre of game that you would love, but no one has attempted or successfully made a game in that genre? I'm sure if you, and they're using The Sims, started the dollhouse game genre. I'm sure if you locked me in a room long enough, I could come up with some. Just off the top of my head, they're not new ones, but ones I think are kind of underserved, where I feel like there's not nearly enough games that do stuff like this. One is sort of the Dungeon Siege style, party-based action RPGs. I think there's not nearly enough of those. Another I wouldn't mind more of is tower defense RPG hybrids. Kind of like Blight Mode and Path of Exile and the game Death Trap. Those are two I can think of. I kind of like those. Another one is first-person shooter real-time strategy hybrid games. So I think I mentioned before, was it Carrier Command Gaia Mission? There's one I never played, but I think it was called Savage. That was kind of like a mix of those. I like the idea how you're doing some strategy, but then you have to go on the ground and like complete the mission. And there's different ways of mixing that up, and I think there could be more like that. Let's see, and the other one I had was sort of, for lack of a better name, a chaos simulator, because I was thinking of something like with Messiah. I feel like they really didn't live up to its potential, where I love the idea of just like causing just chaos and things. Or a while back I played, was it Days Gone? And my favorite moment in those games was getting a bunch of zombies chasing me and then running into these bandits' hideout and then just kind of hiding or sitting it out and then just watching the chaos unfold of the bandits like trying to shoot all these zombies and getting swarmed by them. And I love moments like that in games. I'm sure there's a few more examples of that sort of thing, but oh yeah, there's one game I played that was a little bit like that. Was it Infectinator? Where the idea is you're trying to spread the zombie virus and you have to figure out like where exactly to spread it to get like the zombies chasing everyone and not get them all shot up so that it spreads just right, that sort of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't mind more chaos games. Okay, I'll answer a couple of the live ones. They're saying, what did I study in college? I switched majors like more than once. I think at first I was looking at like sound stuff, but then let's see. Then I was looking at film, and then I got the impression I wasn't going to be able to make a living off of that, because the impression I got from film or digital media or something was that it was because this is before YouTube, or before YouTube had a real presence, I guess. That you had to, it was less about your ability and more about your networking skills. And I didn't have confidence in my networking skills. Still don't, to be honest. But then YouTube emerged and I was able to kind of dabble around with that. But what I graduated with was a degree in criminal justice and a minor in psychology. My mentality was that I probably wasn't going to like any job that I got, so I at least wanted a job where I wasn't bored. And law enforcement is a way of getting that. Somebody's asking a geopolitical question that I'm probably wiser to avoid. Let's see. How bad are limited respawning enemies where they respawn, but if you kill them enough times, they stop? Like Turok Dinosaur Hunter or Dark Souls 2. I didn't know they stopped in Dark Souls 2. I mean, I feel like Gothic did it best from replaying it, where I don't mind the idea of plot-based respawning enemies. So if something has happened to the plot where enemies are moving in and you feel like time has passed in the game, then yeah, it kind of worked out well. But I think what I don't like about the Dark Souls respawning is where respawning enemies don't bother me as much for most of them is kind of in their sort of Metroid clones where you get more and more powers so that the respawning enemies, they're almost like they're made out of paper by the time that you get all your abilities. You can just blast right through them, so it's almost like they're nothing. And I don't mind that too much. Whereas in Dark Souls, you know, even low-level enemies can take a bite out of you. So it's, you can't just ignore them. But no, I before I replayed it for the game dungeon, I'd completely forgotten that a few of them come back after like major chapters. So yeah, and I realized, yeah, that is kind of, it feels more natural. Like, you know, maybe some of the wildlife kind of drifted back in. So, any plans to make a video on Pathologic? No, not particularly. That's another game that looks like it's clever, but not one I'd really want to play. I've watched the playthrough of the first one. So, okay, I'm going to go back to some of the submitted questions. I'll look again at some of the live ones in a bit. What's your take on licensing practices as they pertain to commercial software, and if you believe there's any intersection there with Stop Killing Games? Do you feel like Stop Killing Games could be a Pandora's box that may pull in the wrong direction? Well, for the latter part, no, absolutely not. We have basically nothing to lose. But like this, if it did make things worse, it would be on such a small level compared to what's already happening to games being destroyed. But for licensing practices, well, I think for licensing practices, that's why I'll say this. If you're trying to make any progress with game preservation and you're relying on the terms that are in the end user license agreement, you've already lost. That's why we have to go to a higher authority with statutory consumer rights. You know, stuff that they can't take away from you just because they put it in a license agreement. And I feel like having the game that you paid for destroyed and permanently disabled should be off the table, is how I feel about it. So that's why we have to. So I feel like if we have that, then part of me almost doesn't care what they're putting in the license agreement. I mean, yeah, there's going to be small stuff, but it just all, that's the thing. With games, just about every issue out there, just to me, pales compared to having games destroyed. You know, games you want to keep that you've paid money for, destroyed, and there's nothing you can do about it. To me, like every other issue in gaming just pales compared to that. Because it's like, I mean, that's about the worst thing that can happen to gaming, in my opinion. That games you like get destroyed forever. So as for a Pandora's box, no. I think the risks are just, I think the risks are incredibly low. Assuming there is any risk. And there's only gain, I think, for this, from a preservation standpoint. I mean, there's a few fringe scenarios in the short term that, yes, this could cause disruption. I'll acknowledge that. Like if a developer was getting ready to release their game just after the legislation went into effect, like if it's got passed, and they made no plans for an end-of-life plan, yes, that could be very problematic for them. But they're going to have years' notice on this, almost certainly. So, I mean, at some point, you have to disrupt the cycle to have a chance of ending this. Are there any games you think have a better atmosphere when you turn their music off? Yeah, a couple. I mentioned the game dungeon, Death Road to Canada. I feel like that's a much more suspenseful game with the music off, and the music kind of didn't fit the mood to me. I had another one. Oh yeah, the original Alone in the Dark. Like the intro music is okay, but then after that, it feels like almost like a little goofy. Whereas it's kind of suspenseful if you just turn the music off. Well, I may get some hate for this one. In my opinion, I ended up turning off the music in Hollow Knight because it's not that it's bad music, it's that I felt like it was a mismatch. Because if you turn the music off, Hollow Knight has kind of a little bit of creepy and mysterious vibe to it. And like it's it has like you might be digging deep and uncovering some horrors kind of vibe to it, and that is just not the mood at all to the music that it gives. Again, the music's not bad. Like let's say you took the music from Hollow Knight and put it in like a sunny RPG across a fantasy land. I think it might fit a lot better or something like that. So it's not that it was bad. It's just that I felt like it was a mismatch. And might be some more. Okay, I'll glance at the questions. I have not played Abiotic Factor. I'm curious about it. But will you ever make a short self-contained videos again, similar to Galaxy Gold? Yeah, I hope to. Let's see. What do you think about the state of Zombie Panic Source right now? I haven't kept up, I'm afraid. Oh, yeah, so I was talking about Path of Exile 2. Yeah, I haven't played it because I'm waiting for it to go to free to play. Okay. Argues that you don't own it even though it's technically a one-time purchase. Oh, okay, so they're saying right now you can buy it for $30 or more depending on the edition you purchase, claiming to be a supporter pack. My friend argues you don't own it even though it's technically a one-time purchase. Would you say that counts as ownership or is it reasonable? Okay, this is where we gotta get into the details for what we're pushing. Or actually, the consumer agencies might even agree with what I'm saying, for all I know. One, technically, your friend is correct. You do not own Path of Exile 2. However, what you have paid money for is that microtransaction. So I think you get a skin with the supporter pack. Okay, well now you have a skin in a game. Now the license agreement may say you don't own that either. But consumer law, that's a gray area. That is untested in many countries, which we're going to get it tested in France, Germany, and Australia. So if let's say you own that skin or you own that stash tab in Path of Exile, that like they conclude that like, yeah, you pay for this. And then later they decide to permanently disable the game so that you cannot access that, well, then that might be a violation of your consumer rights and they could get in trouble for that. So it's kind of like the microtransactions are kind of a back end way to maybe save the game because you're right. You do not own the game because you didn't pay for the game. Well, although for early access, that's no, actually, you're right. For early access, that one gets fuzzy because you can't access, because I realized I was thinking of Path of Exile 1 where it's free to play. So yeah, you can pay $0 and play Path of Exile. But if you have to pay for the early, I'm honestly not sure. But I guess at best, yeah, I guess at best you would be with, yeah, this is, I'm not, you're given access to the game. No, I think it's kind of like you're buying a game at that point. Unless, okay, the exception is unless they tell you exactly when it ends. Like if you got early access, but they say that this is for only 6 months or something, then I think that's relatively unassailable. But if they just say you have access to the game, but we can end it whenever we want, that sounds like a game purchase to me. So yeah, you're right. So maybe scrap what I said. I was thinking about just buying a microtransaction, but it's probably moot point anyway because I think you do get microtransactions from supporter packs. Yeah, somebody's saying, or are you buying a game until it's free access? Well, the thing is, if it's free, you still haven't been deprived of your game. It's just that you maybe had a questionable purchase. That's. Yeah, like if you pay full price for a game, then it goes free to play, yeah, you might feel like a sucker, but I don't think that's something that the developer should really face any sort of penalty for, because that's a business decision and you haven't been deprived of your game and you got to access it before anybody playing it for free did. It's when they shut it down and then you paid money for it, but now you can never access it again. That's where, like, I'm just going all in and trying to push this issue as hard as possible. So yeah, no, you're right. I realized I was kind of mixing up Path of Exile 1, but yeah, because if you have to pay money to access the game and they're giving you no expiration date, that's pretty much the identical process to buying a game that you can keep forever. So then the question is, well, what aspect of the law gives them the right to permanently disable your purchase? And that's what's unsettled in many countries. And hopefully it comes out in our favor. But if we can get enough signatures for the European Citizens Initiative, then I think we leave a hell of a lot less to chance then. Okay. Oh yeah, we have a darker one here. Would you die for a belief? I thought about it, and in general, no, but there could be extenuating circumstances. And this gave me two thoughts. One is, like an example, in the show 24, in one season, there's a character that's been exposed to lethal doses of radiation. I mean, he's still alive, but he only has like a few days, maybe a couple weeks. I forget what the number was. So he's kind of a dead man walking. And later that day, I think they find a nuclear bomb that's set to go off in Los Angeles, and they can't safely defuse this in time. I forget how much time is left, maybe like 20 minutes or something. But they are at an airfield, so their next best plan is to fly this out as far away from the city as they can to, not have it blow up and prevent the deaths of millions of people. So they're putting together like just some plane to just kind of fly it out to the desert in the middle of nowhere get it as far as they can from the city. And in that, he volunteers to be the one to fly that because he doesn't have much time left anyway. So he may as well go down doing something that's going to save millions. And I was thinking, if I was in that scenario, yeah, I would probably do the same because my ticket's already been punched at that point. So, I mean, there's a lot less to lose, I guess is the way to look at it. So that would be an extenuating circumstances that if I was in that exact same scenario, I'd probably do the same. But I have no desire to be a martyr for anything. So that's my general answer. And the other thought it gave me was in the Blood Omen and Soul Reaver series. At the end of the game of Blood Omen 1, Kane's presented with a choice where you have two endings. You can either sacrifice himself and then there's order restored to the land, or because of some mystical imbalance thing, or he doesn't, and then that spawns 4 sequels. So he doesn't. And the line that stood out to me was in Soul Reaver 2, they have menu music that starts off with Kane refused the sacrifice. And then that menu music ends up going to be either the best or the second best music in the entire series. The music for that's so good. Like it. Here, I'll have a link to that too. It takes a minute to get going, but that music. That was an idea I had before. Is like trying to figure out like what are like the top 10 best menu themes for video games, and that would be way up there. That might be number 2 for me. That I forget the title of it, but it's the Soul Reaver 2 menu music. it has a lot going on in it. So yeah, it like parts of it sound like it's like kind of Eastern. And it just has a cool beat to it. I don't know. Yeah, somebody's saying Ozer Midrashim. That's why I said maybe second best, because if you're gonna make the argument that's the best one, yeah, that's hard to argue with. Most of the music to the Legacy of Kain series is just kind of like okay or pretty good, but then Ozer Midrash, however you pronounce it, that one's amazing. That track, that's the opening music, the Soul Reaver. Okay, take a break for live questions. Let's see what that are up there. Where do you draw the line for pirating games? When is it okay and when is it not? Well, I feel like I should plead the fifth on that, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb that if the publisher is no longer selling the game, then I think you're pretty in the clear. I mean, not legally, but in terms of if you're going by like what's ethical or not. I think beyond that it gets blurrier. Another scenario that I think is very saying is if you've already bought the game and you still want to pirate it for other reasons, like the DRM is just hell, or there's some aspect to the crack copy that's better than the official copy. I think that's also a very safe stance. But yeah, let's see. Have you thought about contacting Legal Eagle? I would be happy to talk with him about that, but I doubt I would get through. And the other downside is that he's going to have primarily an American audience, and the vast majority of Americans can't affect the petition directly. That said, they can have word of mouth, and that can maybe help that can maybe get Europeans to. We kind of have to work through Europe on this. They're kind of our last hope for trying to. Our last hope for changing the law ourselves. Everything else is going to be left up to the consumer agencies. We're kind of completely at their mercy for what they do. But yeah, no, really any YouTuber or streamer of significant size, I'll be happy to talk to about it. And I can try to talk to, but look, the larger the YouTuber, the worse the odds are of my getting through, of getting any sort of response whatsoever. So what I found is far more effective is people who already are part of their audience kind of relaying the message. I'll respond if people contact me about it. So, or if they give me direct info on how to reach them that's not through like a bunch of filters or, goes through their PR business team that are just going to throw it in the trash, that sort of thing. So, okay. Somebody's asking what games I've spent the most hours in. I'm not sure. I'm probably older ones before I've just keep game hopping so much now. But maybe Unreal Tournament 2004. Maybe Path of Exile, actually. Maybe Zombie Panic Source. And maybe, what? Team Fortress Classic or Fortress Forever. I played a lot of those. I'm not sure out of all of them. Okay, I'll answer one more live one, then I'll go back to the submitted questions. Well, okay, no, two, since I saw one. Okay, one's saying, do you rewatch old videos? Be Total Biscuit. Well, I have no problem watching old or rewatch old videos. I sometimes rewatch them if they're like really entertaining, but usually not rewatching much. If there's like scenes I really liked. And the other question I saw was, is there anything ready for doing a last push on the last few months? It's honestly, it's this next month that's I think going to determine if we have a chance. Because if we can't pass like at least the 500,000 mark after that. I think we just don't have the momentum. Now that said, a big YouTuber or streamer could always come out of nowhere, but I don't know how to reach them or get their attention or anything. So, but I will have another video that'll be kind of like my last big gasp attempt. But like we either need to grow a lot this month or else I would bet on it not happening. Now, I'm not going to be like total defeatist and just refuse to do anything on it, but I'm just not expecting it to work past that point. At this point, it's still a bit of a fog to me. So, okay. More questions. Oh yeah, I'm not really qualified to answer this one. They're saying, do you think video game decompilation projects are safer in terms of legal gray areas than emulation or not? Honestly, the fact that they're able to decompile like closed source games, that's almost, from my technical knowledge, that almost feels like they're magicians for being able to do that. So I'm not sure of the exact process with how it happens in the first place, but I think they're probably both equally safe. Because here's the thing, in the United States at least, Sony versus Bleem determined that reverse engineering emulators is legal. You can do that. Now, where you get into trouble, I think we're that one group that did a Switch emulator. I think they got into trouble because they were streaming like the new Legend of Zelda game before it was even out or something like that, or talking about it. And then they might have an argument that, I'm not even sure what the exact charge would be, but that you're promoting piracy or, you're doing copyright infringement. And the other way you can get in, and see, that's a different charge than making an emulator. Like if you're just reverse engineering an emulator, that is legal. Like totally, to the best of my knowledge. Again, maybe it's different for some countries, but the United States, which tends to be kind of hostile in this sort of thing, it's legal. But to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not a lawyer, yada yada. I mean, Sony versus Bleem. That's the court case that established this precedent. Now that's if you reverse engineer. If you're if you're doing something like let's say you rip the BIOS from the console that you're using for that, and then you distribute that. See, then you could be in a lot of trouble because then that's copyright infringement. But if you're just kind of figuring it out, then I think it's legal. So I think, now for decompilation, again, I'm not even sure how they're able to do this, but that sounds to me like reverse engineering. And then what they do is release the tools to decompile it or recompile the game if you own the game yourself. So they can't, like a lot of mods do this, where they can't redistribute the game files, but they can give you a tool that you can run on your copy to build the mod or something like that. I imagine it's similar to that. So I think those are both, as long as they're aware that they're not crossing any copyright infringement lines, I think those are both safe methods. And they're both a hell of a lot of work. I wouldn't even want to have to fathom, but I'm glad people do them. So it's saying, what do you think belongs in a museum of video games? Think of the Louvre or the Criterion Collection, masterpieces of the art, even if not a personal favorite of yours. This one wasn't my favorite question for a couple reasons. Like, well, and for one, like I feel like for a lot of, I'm someone who I think has the ability to kind of step back from games and kind of look at it like a person who's not in the games would look at it. And when you do that, a whole lot of games can seem stupid. Like really, like it's, now I enjoy games, but if you're trying to call something a masterpiece, it's like, well, it's kind of a masterpiece for the people who appreciate games, or maybe even that genre, or acknowledge the talent behind it. but an average person might think it's just kind of dumb or just silly. Like a lot, like, oh man, there's a great quote on it where I think it was like a Cracked article where they were talking about how he liked BioShock and thought it was great writing, but to compare this against like movies, this would be on par with like because you're shooting someone every 10 seconds or something, this would be on par with like a straight to video Steven Seagal movie that's just pure grindhouse cheese or something that he said. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's fun, so I don't. So I think there is a valid critique on there. And there's lots of things in games like that where, or just sometimes if I'm getting immersed, that if I wasn't more accustomed to games, I would get ripped out of it. Like, okay, the character died and now I've respawned. And it's like, well, this feels kind of gamey now, or this feels kind of artificial the way they did it. For a lot of them, some not necessarily. Like if they made that a really clever aspect of it, so the process felt seamless. So I don't know. I feel like okay. Here's a good analogy. Like what I think games are in similar territory for like claiming them as masterpieces as comic books. There are comic books that are really great, but they're pretty rare. And it's like a lot of them are, I mean, really great for like a general audience, I think. That's what I should say. A lot of them are like superhero stuff and like, let's defeat the bad guy. Let's dress up in capes. So you're asking like, what's the masterpiece of those? And I feel like if you're not already a comic book fan, then it might seem kind of pretentious to do that sort of thing. Now I'm sure there are a few candidates. I'd have to really think about it. That I feel like okay, you could present this to a general audience, and I think it wouldn't seem stupid to a large chunk of people. But I guess the other thought I didn't really like this question was, when you're looking at the masterpieces, like even if you clear that hurdle, it's probably going to be the same games that have been talked about again and again and again. And that's not really where I like to focus my mind on things. Like I like finding the stuff that, like I'm a big fan of like, underrated games, and so to spend more focus on thinking about, okay, well, which games that are already really well known are the best from this list. It's like, I don't know, that doesn't interest me as much. However, this does make me want to, I think I'm going to do it at some point, make that list I talked about where I'll go through each year, maybe back to like, I don't know, like late 80s or something, and pick out my favorite, like my personal favorite 3 games of that year, and just have like a big list. And I very probably didn't play them that year, but for that year, what are my favorite ones that came out? Because then I can kind of narrow it down. So, yeah, I guess that's the other thing. When I talk about like that hurdle of things kind of seeming gamey and just might seem dumb to the average person, if you can get past those hurdles, some of the absolute best games, if you are used to games and like them, are probably going to be ones that have a little bit of the dumb elements in them, but we're just accustomed to them, or they're there for practicality. Whereas like the really artsy stuff or maybe not necessarily really artsy, but the stuff that doesn't have a lot of the traditional game stuff, those may not be the best games necessarily. So it's kind of I don't know, just looking at like the masterpieces. And that's the thing, even among the variety of games is so varied too, because it's, I mean, when you get into like what's a masterpiece, I mean, I guess you have a lot of subjectivity in art in general, but it just feels like, I don't know. you're. It seems like there's very beyond a few things. There's very little standards as to what we're measuring. I guess But yeah, I'm more. I'm more in the camp of I just like games to be enjoyable and fun, or just kind of like a great experience and not worry about if they're winning accolades or the there's significance to culture, that sort of thing. I mean, sometimes if it comes up, I'll talk about it, but that's not really where my mind's at. Oh, actually, here's a question for the audience. Someone brought this up with me, and I hadn't thought about it, but I'm thinking maybe they're onto something here. Apparently, there's a trend. I'm thinking maybe not Nintendo, but maybe. There's a trend among AAA games for the writing to not have just a good, happy, victorious ending. And and it has to be something that's like bittersweet or some tragic element to it, or else other writers won't take them seriously. And from how it was explained to me, he was saying that it almost sounds like this might be like a groupthink pitfall of video game writers. And I was thinking, geez, I was looking at AAA games. I was thinking, yeah, that does happen a lot now. I was like, so I'm wondering, yeah, somebody's saying it's very pretentious. Yeah, it sounded kind of pretentious to me too. And it's almost like making them, if that's true, maybe it's just he's in his own bubble and just what he's exposed to, and we're not thinking of these others. But if that's true, then that's kind of making game writing weaker. That's kind of making them not as good. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have that. Like, it makes sense for some games. Like, if the whole game is, I think like the more of like a struggle it is, and your tone, then that, like, I thought they were milking it, but like in the Walking Dead game, like the Telltale one, I can understand that they don't want to have just a simple happy ending for that, because thematically that's not as good a fit. But other games, it feels like, I mean, I'm probably gonna get some hate on this, but I felt like with Cyberpunk, it felt like they were going out of their way to not have like a good ending. you know, uh, it's let's see. I have to. Yeah, somebody's saying they're sick of the characters dying at the end. So I say, yeah, it's all misery. So I say it's the same with modern TV. See, that makes sense. Yeah, Silent Hill 2 is another game where I feel like, yeah, that's a game where a bittersweet ending totally fits that. Because the whole game is just like a psychological head trip. And even the endings, like, not all of them I'd say are bittersweet. Some are just kind of more creepy, or you're wondering like, whoa, what's going on here? See, that's one where that fits, but I'm trying to think of ones where it doesn't. So I was saying like Oscar bait movies. Yeah, maybe that's what's happening. They think they need this to have an award or something. But I like happy, victorious endings. It's well, I mentioned Silent Hill 2. I was thinking of Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 has a pretty good ending. And the thing is, I'm not entirely if this is true, I'm not entirely sure where it's coming from, because I was thinking, like I mentioned before, for movies, my favorite drama would probably be The Shawshank Redemption. And the ending to that movie is about as positive as you could possibly get given the circumstances. And that's like an award-winning drama. Lots of people recognize how good a movie that is even now. So, I mean, this isn't necessary. It's just, anyway, I hope there's less truth to that than my friend was saying, but he could be right. So, Yeah, somebody's saying sacrifice is an excuse for not creating an emotional connection between the player and the game characters. It pulls on your natural emotional responses instead of getting you to actually care about the characters, as that is harder. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's and that doesn't mean I always like. Yeah, I think my favorite endings are like the super victorious ones. There's great music playing and like I like those. I like the sort of uh not exactly horror movie twist ones, but ones where you think everything is okay, but then at the very end they let you know, oh nope, something's off, and then you go to credits. I like that, or ones that get like end kind of mysteriously, or yeah, well, like with Puzzle Agent. I think that one counts as a mysterious ending. Uh, so yeah, it's yeah. Well, I got kind of derailed there, but okay. Next question: how much of Gordon's Freeman's personality and Freeman's mind was planned from the beginning versus developing organically as he made more episodes? A fair chunk was planned. I wanted him to be really volatile. I wanted him to be paranoid. I wanted him to be kind of an egomaniac to just to add to the ludicrousness of it. Let's see. I think those were the main things. But I mean, but volatile covers a lot. Like, so by volatile, I mean, like, say you have a situation, this person is going to inject themselves into it and just raise as much hell as possible from their thought processes or their conversation and that sort of thing. Like, I kind of wanted that element to it just to keep it interesting. But yeah, I think those are the main things. And I guess what developed organically is me realizing he would be a little more kind of battle hardened and shell shocked towards the end of this, where like the things that were scaring him more initially aren't going to phase him as much because he's had too much repetition from it. So yeah, I think that's something that kind of emerged because it felt like he's too seasoned is the problem. Do you have a favorite game from the somewhat recent revival of boomer shooters? They mentioned Dusk, Iron Fury, and Medieval, and so on. I've played Dusk and Iron Fury. I haven't played a Medieval. I think out of those, my favorites. Well, there's some big ones I haven't played yet. I haven't played Celico. I haven't played Bolt Gun. I haven't played Ultra Kill. Those are all ones I want to check out. I don't know if there's like a stand alone favorite, but some I had that I liked were Strafe, Cultic. That one was kind of a Blood spiritual successor. Actually, I think it might be better than Blood, actually, in terms of gameplay. And Forgive Me, Father. That was another one. The thing with boomer shooters and me is like, I was never a huge first-person shooter fan until like they stopped being more maze-like. Like again, my favorite kind of Doom era first-person shooter was Strife, and that one was almost like a prototype Deus Ex, where it's a first-person shooter with some RPG elements, or you know, like a real light RPG, because there's a story. You know, there's a hub. You're advancing the plot. I like having plot in my games, really. And I don't really like the kind of maze-like aspect of it unless I'm just loving the atmosphere. I kind of like being able to kind of progress through the level without having to think, okay, do I go here? Do I go here? Okay, now I'm lost. Like, I don't know. So I kind of liked, for me, for first-person shooter, I don't mind the aesthetics of 90s first-person shooters. I'm fine with that. But in terms of like game design, I like them when they were like a little bit more streamlined than most of what was in the 90s. Yeah, somebody's saying non-surreal environments. I mean, surreal can be okay if there's like some of it. Like let's say the game is like in a contemporary setting, but then you enter some portal, and then part of that is surreal, but then you go back to the real world. Well, that's okay. If you're like, if the surreal has like a lot of context, that's all right. But yeah, if it's just really abstract, I'm not into that either. So I kind of like plot, and I kind of, that makes me, it doesn't have to be like the greatest story ever, but just something that kind of makes me want to keep going to the next level. And I like the level design kind of having a flow to it and not just being abstract maze where you have to find the key, open this door, and that sort of stuff. But so yeah, I think my tastes are slightly too young to be a boomer shooter. So Gen X. Well, I guess technically I'm not Gen X, but more of a Gen X shooter using that analogy there. But yeah, because because there's even stuff like Strife and Deus Ex were kind of like the exceptions, but there's like more mainstream stuff I liked. Well, System Shock 2 is kind of an exception also, but that was more direct. Why am I drawing a... What are some like early 2000... Far Cry. That's a great example. I like the gameplay of Far Cry. That flow where there's a story, but you're going through the level, progressing through the map, that sort of thing. Crisis to some extent. Let's see, what are some... I wasn't a huge fan of the levels, but like the flow of Singularity was all right. Kind of like, well, Half-Life. Yeah, what am I saying? Half-Life's a real obvious example where that's kind of, you're going from point A to point B, but there's a lot going on and it kind of flows. So yeah, I kind of, yeah, Half-Life is, I kind of like more Half-Life design or Far Cry design or something like that. Or if you want to go more ambitious, then more something like Deus Ex or Strife. So, let's see. Okay, next question. Well, okay, there's a quick live one. And this next follow-up in the pipes still pending start of production. Oh, it's partially there, but you're getting a new real episode first, and then that's my plan is to get that one out next. Possibly a very short game dungeon if it's not next. So. Let's see. Have you gotten into any tabletop games? Not particularly. It's like I don't really care for combat in those. It's like everything crawls for me once I get into. But I mean, I've played some of them as like a social event. For me, tabletop stuff is more of like a social activity than me like being diehard into the gameplay of it. But maybe I'm playing the wrong games though. There's a lot of tabletop games I don't know about. What is your current process for motion capture? Current process is in limbo. Saying, do you still use the Kinect or have other alternatives taken its place? Well, okay, there's two aspects of it. There's body motion capture and then there's facial motion capture. For body motion capture, the last time I did it was with the Kinect using IPI Soft, where they gave me a free license, though I think that's expired. I'm not sure I can afford to get a new one, but that's something I've been intentionally putting off because that's one of those things where there's probably a development going on all the time. So I kind of want to put that off to the last possible minute before I lock in place what we're using, because maybe there's something better by that point. I have bought, I think it's called a RealSense 3D camera from Intel, but that's more for facial capture. And I'm still trying to decide on the best software. I'm hoping AI has actually opened up some doors with this sort of thing, because I just want whatever is decent and affordable. And that's harder to come by than you'd think. And to complicate things more, though I will eventually cave on this if I have to, is I have kind of a grudge against Apple on this front because there used to be very promising facial capture software. Apple came that had reasonable prices for like regular people. Apple came in, bought it out, closed them off from the public. I think they used some of their software in some of the Star Wars movies. And then later on, it seems like all the facial capture options require an iPhone. So it's like, God, that's such a waste. Like that I can't just buy like a 3D camera instead of just a full iPhone. Like they're going to be priced reasonably to begin with Apple. So I have kind of a grudge against Apple about that. However, and when I looked like a couple years back, it's like everything was flowing that direction. It's like, oh, well, this requires an iPhone. This requires an iPhone. Or like a certain kind that like at the time cost $1,000. So I got really resentful over that. So I want to be damn sure that's what I have to use in order for facial capture. For motion capture, there's more options, but they pop up and go out of business like that. So I'm not sure what's going on right now. So, I mean, for body capture. So that's something I need to figure out for the movie. And it's the sort of thing where the longer I put it off, probably the better my options will be. So that's like the one thing it makes sense to put off as much as possible and make sure like everything else is ready until that point, and then we pull the trigger on something. So yeah, see, somebody's saying Apple's walled garden isn't worth your money. Well, the problem is, it's like that's the problem with them buying up stuff and kind of having like a closed ecosystem. If the alternative is either nothing or some solution that costs $20,000 or something, then they become the only game in town. I mean, that's how. So it's for motion. At some point for facial capture, they were in pseudo monopoly territory. So, but we'll see. Yeah, sorry I'm not more help on that, but that is going to be a priority when I work on the movie, though. So I'll probably have a better answer this year. Okay, they're wondering if I would ever share my music taste, no matter how far out or mainstream the genre is. Yeah, I have no problem with that. My main issue is I need. It's a mess. I need to sort things, and I'm kind of hung up on the idea of like sorting things by category, by sort of like the right mood, and it's just hell trying to figure that out. And like almost all the solutions out there are towards directing it towards your Spotify collection. Well, I have all kinds of music that's not on Spotify from soundtracks, so it's like that doesn't help me that much. But that's one of my quests ongoing. Once I get that sorted out, I'll be happy to share like everything. So yeah, in fact, that was kind of bugging me that this is something I sort of wanted to like get viewer feedback on, but I can't think of a way to have like a discussion session on this without tripping every copyright flag out there. Because not legally, what we would be doing would be fair use, where we play like, 20 seconds of a clip and then talk about like, okay, well, what does this sound like? How should we sort this? But the copyright bots are going to freak out over that and just invariably, either like mute the channel or get like a copyright claim, and then I have to fight that, and then it's just a pain. Like, so this would be legal, but I don't know of solutions to get around it, I guess. So, I mean, maybe streaming on another platform that doesn't police this sort of thing, and then I could put the video up on, I could test putting it up on YouTube, and if that gets flagged, I don't put it up, I just let people download it afterwards or something. What's the most badass video game vehicle you've ever seen? I don't know. I guess, yeah, the chat can offer some. I mean, these aren't like fantastic answers, but one that came to mind was actually from like one of the Batman games with the Batmobile. I remember seeing it in like ironically in a PhysX demonstration. That's one of the other future questions I know, so I'll get to that. But the Batmobile looked kind of badass. I guess sort of badass is like the main car, the car from Max Damage and Carmageddon. It basically has like a saw blade mohawk to the car kind of thing. Or just for a vehicle, one that comes to mind, there might be better answers, is the Leviathan from Unreal Tournament 2004. Because you see that vehicle and, that thing, not only does that thing mean trouble, but it kind of looks like it too. So. Are you planning on going on the Side Scrollers podcast with Stuttering Craig? He's told me he wants to have you as a guest and talks about your Stop Killing Games campaign. You should look them up and message him. Yeah, I looked up the channel. He has, like, I think over 100,000 subscribers. I mean, if he's interested in having me, I may as well. I mean, look, those are the easiest ones to go on to, ones that people want to have me on. Honestly, I kind of hate having to push myself on people for other channels because, like, I'm like really fighting my instincts doing that. That's why I've always tried to present the option. You don't have to talk to me. I just want them to mention Stop Killing Games, or if you don't even want to mention that because my email is on that website, just mention the initiative, like the EU initiative. My name is nowhere on that. I have no official association with the initiative. So, you can cut me out of it, but if you want me to talk about it or, clarify things, I'm fine with doing it. Yeah, I mean, I looked at his channel. It looks like he covers a lot of stuff. It looks like he covers a lot of culture war stuff, which I'm going to be useless on. But if we're talking about Stop Killing Games, sure. I can try and give a mention. I will say, though, I may want to see how a couple of these other promotions go first, because for 100,000 subscribers, and since it looked like an American channel, for people in the EU, on my channel, that represents roughly about, 15% of my viewership. So the numbers, these probably aren't going to be earth-shattering numbers, but maybe that reaches some audiences that haven't heard about it. Especially because I actually hadn't heard of him prior to this post. So, sure. I mean, reaching out to demographics I'm unfamiliar with is exactly what needs to be done for the campaign. And maybe somebody should say something in the chat. It looks like it's frozen again, but maybe people are just kind of coasting there. I always like to check to make sure it hasn't, like, completely frozen. But yeah, sure. And hey, so he's like what I would call in the medium category. If we can get a bunch of medium YouTubers and streamers also, great. I mean, I think we are going to need something big, but maybe that promotion that I can't talk about just yet, that's different from the other promotion that I can't talk about just yet. The other failed promotion. Maybe that gets us to where we need to go, and this helps close the gap. So sure. I'll try and reach out to him. Let's see. This is a question I don't have a great answer from, but they're saying, what are my thoughts on my videos influencing foreign viewers' language that, like, apparently Freeman's might help them learn some English? I mean, great if you enjoyed it. And hey, feel free to spread the word in whatever your native language is about the European Citizens Initiative. I guess that's my main thought, because you're the target demographic now. Somebody's saying maybe I should try having a small oxygen bottle, see if it helps. Well, I mean, I guess now it's getting warmer. Once people stop burning coal, I could open the window. I think I've done that sometimes. I've opened the window and just behind the curtain. I wish I had mosquito netting. We only have, like, screen doors. Like, That's my only hesitation with opening the window. Well, I actually no. Sometimes the neighbor can smoke. That's another reason I don't keep it open all the time. But yeah, bugs and various fumes coming in. But sometimes I do open it during the chats. Someone says I have some of the best evergreen content. I don't actually know what that means, but thanks. Based on your YouTube analytics, how much of your revenue comes from replays on old videos? I'm not sure, actually. This is the sort of thing I probably could figure out, but I mean, maybe half or half of the YouTube income. So I don't know. I'm just guessing. To be honest, if I don't have to, I try not to look at the YouTube statistics because they just stress me out. So like it just reinforces the feeling that I'm not getting enough done. So, and I already tend to feel like that, so I'm just scrambling. How do you best avoid procrastination while working digitally, given that you have ease of access to so many distractions at once? Well, I kind of, if I'm working at something, it tends to be pretty intentional. And like sometimes what I do, so if I'm getting distractions, it's usually something kind of jumping out at me, or they kind of caught me in between something. Like let's say I need to get online to research something I wasn't sure about, and then like there's some side video that sounds real interesting. Every once in a while I can look at that if I kind of need a break, a mini break. But then I have to be careful not to get trapped into that and remember, oh God, I'm supposed to get back to work. That's usually not too much of an issue. But one thing I do is like, okay, let's say there is a video that sounds really interesting. Fine, save to watch later. Click on that, go back to what I was doing. Or for social media stuff, if I'm real busy, sometimes I just close the windows like for chat programs and stuff because I'm just like, okay, this is too distracting. I don't need this. Or if I do, I really try to just minimize the time I'm on it. Like if I have to talk to someone on social media about something I'm coordinating, I try to do that. Just leave like a big message. Hopefully there's a little back and forth, and then I'll just leave any important things and just close it. Like I try to kind of get in and out. I don't, social media stuff I don't find helpful with that. Most of what I'm doing, I don't need to be online, so I just don't have a web browser open. That helps. Keeping a list of things I need to work on, maybe if I've lost track, I maybe revisit them in my head. Revisit them to kind of keep me on track, but most of the time I don't need internet for what I'm doing. So if you cut out internet, that frees you up a lot. I guess if you do have an internet, if you're real worried about it, you could honestly make a list for exactly what you need to search for on the internet or what you use it for, and then get off of it. That's another way, but yeah, just avoiding web browsing, avoiding social media. That cuts out most of it. And it's something like a game, that has to be really deliberate if I'm going to fire up a game. I don't really do that in the middle of working unless that's the game I'm covering. So, that's not really a problem. Yeah, same for movies. If I'm just getting a specific clip, just try to get that clip, get it, and not watch other stuff, that sort of thing. So normally that's not too much of a problem for me. Also, it could be with that question, one thing that can be a real big problem for me distracting is just my general state of mind. And you could be partially barking up the wrong tree with, I need to get regular exercise. If I don't, then my mind, my focus ability just goes out the window. So if I'm feeling that happening, I try to like kind of wind it down and go, run or go on a hike or something, come back, and then afterwards I can resume stuff. So yeah, no, that is a real potentially crippling factor if I can't get exercise at some point throughout the day. So Somebody's asking questions I've already answered, so I'll keep from the live chat. So I'll keep going. Uh, okay, maybe I should start picking some because this is such a broad question. They're saying which well, chat, answer this one. Which sci-fi tech do you think could theoretically be invented? I mean, probably lots, but one that came to mind was like, you know how like in some movies like the military will have like these exoskeletons that like lets them like move faster or lift strong. I was thinking, I don't think we'd have a neurological link, but or a very basic one if so. But I was thinking something like that could actually be really useful for the elderly, where if they're having a hard time walking around, well, if they're in their kind of wire mesh exoskeleton suit, maybe they could walk around pretty easily. I don't think you'd really need a neurological link. You would just need it to kind of amplify their existing motions. And it could be like a bit of a learning curve, and you maybe have some like safety elements to keep it from falling over. But I think that can make a lot of sense for the elderly to have like better mobility. Let's see, what's something else that could be invented? Well, I mean, like most things that you see with the GUI and the interfaces, those could, I don't think there's anything stopping them from a technical perspective. It's more, some of those aren't so practical, and the rest is just entrenchment of existing operating systems and companies. Yeah, like I'd love to have gestures for a lot of things. Yeah, help! I've fallen out in my exosuit and I can't get up. Yeah, you would need a measure for that, but that wouldn't be too hard, Let's see, what are some other things? Yeah, because I think for things that could happen, you want to focus more on things that are on Earth. I think the likelihood of something happening goes up a lot then. That hasn't already happened in our lifetimes. Yeah, because I mean, I was thinking stuff like Star Trek was like a real mix because communicators, yeah, we pretty much have the equivalent of that now, and then some. But warp speed, not even close. Replicators, not. I mean, for food, nope. Holodecks, not really, but we're closer than I would have thought, with virtual reality. But oh yeah, well, that's something that's kind of there with like that treadmill and Ready Player One. I think there might actually be something for like haptic gloves where they use motors or electricity to stiffen, so it feels like you're touching things. But yeah, there's probably lots of answers, but I'm trying to think of like technologies that I'm dying for, and well, yeah, actually, I think I heard they're doing what they're testing out cancer vaccines or something, or preliminary or prototype. Though, I mean, there's different types of cancer, so I don't know if that's like it's probably a specialized thing. I haven't had a chance to look into the details of that, but yeah, medical developments. I mean, that's a kind of technology. So. That's what I was saying. If I were to take a pill and instantly rebirth into a new life, let's see. And he's using John McAfee as an example. Would you take that pill? Probably not. I don't have a unless I was just in a state of torment. I don't think I'd really want to roll the dice on living someone else's life. That doesn't. I feel like I'd rather take my own chances, Let's see. Do you think all games would benefit from having a story, even if it's bad? For example, do you think a game like Solitaire would be better off having a story? No, but from my personal taste, I think a whole lot of games will benefit from it. Unless or unless the story is overly dramatic and sappy and all this relationship stuff, then I'd rather have no stories. So. But I mean, I guess where you really don't want a story is if you're there to get straight to the gameplay and you don't want any of this cutscene stuff. You don't want these messages popping up about the plot. No, you're in there to just shoot people or something, or you're there to race. So yeah, you don't want the story getting in the way. But for my taste, I appreciate having even like B movie level stories here. So it definitely helps the experience for me. Okay, I wasn't sure how to answer this. What was your favorite vehicle from a video game? I'm not sure. I mean, the last question was like the most badass. I guess I'd have to think about it. I have positive associations with that spawner van from PlanetSide 2. I forget what it's called. You like you roll up and then you park it, then your team starts spawning there. I also have positives. There was a cheat vehicle in Need for Speed 2 called the FZR 2000, and it looked really slick and went stupid fast. I like that. Okay, so somebody's saying the Warthog. What's the Sunderer? That one sounds familiar. I forget which vehicle the Sunderer is. Oh, that's what I just said. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay. So he's asking the best and worst fan interactions. Well, they've mostly been positive. They say they like the videos and talk about aspects of it. Sometimes we get on different topics. I can't think off the head of like worst fan interaction because fan implies they like the videos. Because look, I've had some pretty nasty interactions from doing the Stop Killing Games campaign. Yet there are people who want my blood from that, but I'm not counting them as fans. Like those will be viewers, So. Okay, somebody's asking for an update on the movie besides I'm working on it. Well, again, I have to get those other videos done, then I'm going in on the movie. Do you think it'd be wise to have community help you with some stuff to get out within a few years at least? Well, I plan to get out in a few years. And you may not believe it, but I bet it bothers me more than you that I haven't got more. Because I kept getting sucked into this cycle of just like, oh God, I need to make enough money to earn rent, make the other videos, and then I'm falling behind on that. And then it felt like there was just no time to carve out for the movie. And then the campaign came along, and I realized I had to risk it either way because time's up essentially with the campaign. That I wasn't going to get an opportunity like this again. So I went all in on that. Now people are pissed there's not more regular videos. My income's dropped. So I've got to build it up just at least a little bit before I do something similar again on the movie. But as for people helping me on it, yeah, I'd love more community help on it. The thing is, there's a pattern. I think the ratio has gotten even higher. It used to be like the people who would contact me offering to help, like about half of them would follow through and then we'd see how it goes. But then half of them I'd say, oh, sure, well, maybe you could help on something like this. And then I never hear from them again. So, and I think that ratio has gone up to like 80% like that. So I'm just assuming just the average person offering to help, I'll list it and then I'm probably never going to hear from them again, or maybe one email exchange and it disappears. That's so much the norm. So, So I have to kind of account for that. And the more of that happens, the more that kind of kills morale for me seeking help on things that are really critical. Because, I mean, beyond a certain point, it can be more work trying to get somebody else to do something than to just do it yourself. So a lot of things unfortunately end up defaulting to me that way. Now, for some things, that, like especially with like character models or certain kinds of animation, I won't have a choice. I just won't have the skills and knowledge to do it myself. But a lot of things I can fall back on that. But yeah, like I said, I'm gonna hold me to it. I'm gonna be spending multiple months, maybe not consecutively, this year working on the movie. It's because like, yeah, you're right. It's getting ridiculous. I'm with you 100% on that. Ross, what do you think about living in a car? Is it possible in Poland? That sounds like, I mean, I imagine it's possible in most countries, but sounds like rough living. I wouldn't really want to do it. I mean, maybe if you had a camper, that'd be different, but yeah, it's not the worst option. Actually, there was a meme I saw about this sort of thing. Let's see if I can find it. I'll put it in the description. Yep, this is it. Okay. Here. Yeah, okay, so here's the meme. I love how my wife pronounces it, a web file. Web. Yeah, on the American starter home. Yeah, they show the home decreasing, and then they show it as like a van, and then like for 2030s, they just have a backpack and a shotgun and a machete for the starter home. So, let's see. But yeah, no, living out of a car sounds rough. I fortunately haven't had to do that, but it sounds rough. Yeah, yeah. There was an Onion article about that a while back too. I'll try and put that in the notes also. I mean, let's see. You've talked before about having major depression in your early 20s. Yeah, late teens, early 20s. How did you get out of that? What ended up kicking me out of that was the right medication. For me, it was called Buprion or Wellbutrin. And like within days, it's like I felt like my whole personality being restored. Prior to that, I was prescribed Prozac for like 6 months. It just didn't do anything. So yeah, there's different flavors of depression. I guess my only advice would be try and see if you can, try to see a psychologist. I mean, not psychologist, psychiatrist about it, to maybe they can help figure out like what medication might kick you out of it. No, this was a while back. Like I don't currently take medication, but I took it for a few years after I had the major depression, which I really needed it then. And then I just kind of experimented with going off of it after that, and I was mostly okay, and it's been mostly like that since. Again, I can still kind of have flashes of it now and then, but it's nothing close to what it was prior. So, yeah, here's that question. What do you think about NVIDIA removing 32-bit physics from the RTX 5000 series? I think it's awful. Yeah, I made a post on this on Twitter, but it's not that you can say much on Twitter because of the character count, but this is why I never really like proprietary solutions that much, because things like this happen. NVIDIA's done this before. I mean, they've killed support for the 3D, their stereoscopic drivers that they bought, the 3D Vision stuff. Now, I mean, maybe that was a mixed blessing in disguise because we've seen some other solutions emerge. But yeah, I've seen maybe they drop DLSS or frame generation down the line. You know, I mean, it would take a while because they're big on that now. But who knows? You know, geez, there's something else that they've dropped, but I forget what it is. Yeah, that comes up a bit actually in the next episode. There's some things that I remember seeing in video cards that I'm not sure they were always there. I'm kind of a couple moments like that, but or with the ray tracing, well, I guess now we're seeing support. Yeah, I guess now that's being integrated into the API pipeline. So maybe that's so. Yeah, if AMD cards can run that, that's good too. But yeah, I don't like proprietary solutions for things. I hope somebody comes up with a workaround. In a perfect world, when companies did this, I wish they would just be required to release the source code for it, because again, that's not going to happen from NVIDIA. But it's I'm completely in support of a company wanting to end support of any technology that they have. But it's like when people depend on this, then it's just such a prick move to just kill it and lock it down and make sure nobody can run it. I mean, yeah, I guess you're going to be able to run it on legacy hardware, but I mean, that ages and becomes obsolete over time, whereas games are media, I've always felt like a good game is a good game. So maybe you want to run that game 20 years from now, whereas it could be a mess trying to run like old hardware from now. So it's but yeah, I think it's awful, and that's why. I mean, NVIDIA's done this with a lot of stuff. Like I think the only reason they opened up G-Sync was because they were kind of losing on it to AMD because AMD went with FreeSync being an open standard, that was gaining ground, I think. I guess FXAA you could run on either card, but that one's not. I mean, the technology might be proprietary, but like being able to run it isn't. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I think it's awful, and I don't have the energy or the legal standing to try to have consumer protection against NVIDIA for doing something like that, but ideally they should have some more accountability for doing that. What brightness do you keep your monitor at? And do you find yourself adjusting it a lot? No, I tend to keep it the same. The one, there's something I would like to eventually have, if I can do it through window blinds, is like set up like a hotkey I could hit so that like I could have a day theme and then a night theme. Because yes, you have dark and light themes in Windows, but those are pathetic. I want like a real theme, so like a skin for it. But yeah, okay, so my brightness, I can read you out the numbers, but it's going to be different for different monitors. But okay, here, I'll check. My brightness setting is, where is it? Okay, 83% brightness and 75% contrast levels. But that can mean totally different things on a different monitor. So, yeah, I don't. I'm not someone who needs like eye bleeding brightness. Just like reasonably bright. With the unofficial PC port of Sonic Unleashed released because the Xbox 360 version, do you think there's any hope that the crew can be saved with the Xbox 360 version? Well, as somebody replied underneath that, thankfully the Crew Unlimited group is working on a server emulator. Actually, I haven't checked in with them how public it is yet, but they've shown proof of concept. I attended one of their streams on it. So, what my opinion is they can take as long as they need to. I'm happy they're doing it, because I don't know if anybody has made progress on that besides them. The other thing is, let's say you could decompile the Xbox 360 version. You might still be screwed because it's going to need to connect to the server in order to run it. I mean, maybe you could do a hack job on it if you could really get to the code to like find a way to circumvent it. But that's why that's why this practice is so insidious, is because it just makes it borderline impossible to have to preserve the game. Even I'll say this on the Crew Unlimited, they said to me that if they had, the only reason we have a hope of a server emulator coming for the Crew is because before it shut down, they went and were recording all this information about the packets and how they operate, and were able to kind of divine some of how it worked. They said if they hadn't done that, they would have been completely screwed. So it really does kind of hold the game hostage, is this practice. Now, again, for decompiling, I mean, I think by all means, tell me later, or especially you can email me, rosswscott@gmail.com. For decompiling, just because they were able to do it for Sonic Unleashed, I don't think that means it opens the floodgates for Xbox 360 games. I think that might have been a one-off thing, because, I mean, I don't know. This stuff, being able to do that in the first place is so far beyond my grasp of how they're doing it. I'd have to research a lot to understand what they're doing. But I mean, I would love to be wrong, because I mean, I can think of all kinds of Xbox 360 games I'd love to see have PC ports. So I love this. I mean, thankfully they did Sonic Unleashed, but it's there's room to have a lot more, They're saying, since I complained about not having enough oxygen in the room sometimes, have I considered getting a CO2 detector? I am not, but I will take that under advisement. That's probably not a bad idea. So I'm usually keeping the door open unless I'm recording, Yeah, and so I was talking about possibly getting a plant. Well, this is just going to feed the stereotype, but at my last apartment, I did have a plant, and it started growing mold. So but the conditions there were worse than here. So maybe I could do that, but plants can sometimes draw bugs too. So it's kind of a pick your poison sort of thing. Yeah, if it wasn't for the bugs, I'd have no problem with more plants. What's your go-to breakfast cereal? I don't know. I mean, I haven't eaten breakfast cereal in years really, but it's if you're trying to not gain weight, you probably don't want to eat a lot of breakfast cereal. I guess, I mean, ones I liked when I was younger was Chex, Special K, Cheerios. My mother never really let me have like the super sugary kinds, like Lucky Charms or stuff. I would usually only have those if I'd be like at a friend's house or something. Let's see. No, Wheaties are okay. Trying to think of others I liked. Corn Flakes are all right. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't get to. I didn't often get to try the super sugary kind. Yeah, like what, Count Chocula, or what were some? Or yeah, what was it? Tony the Tiger. What the hell? Okay, so yeah, I forget. Yeah, that shows how my brain prioritizes things. I forget Frosted Flakes, uh, Fruit Loops. Yeah, I've been able to sample those, but those are almost like super sweet. So, uh, oh yeah, I think my favorite of like the basically dessert cereals would be like the doesn't Reese's have like something that's sort of like a cereal version of Reese's peanut butter cups? Those would probably be my favorite out of the ones that I've had. But no, I haven't had breakfast cereal in a long time. Yeah, that's the thing about growing older is you can't eat as much fun stuff. So, or you can, but there's more obvious consequences. Yeah. Okay, I may start skipping some I don't have great answers for. Well, okay, one's asking if I can only pick one action star, who is the greatest of all time? They list a lot of action stars. Well, I'm semi-ignorant. I'd say by screen presence, out of they have like a big list here. Maybe I can just copy and paste it. It's here. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. It did it all. It bunched it all together, but it's there. My favorites by screen presence might either, for my personal favorites, probably be either Arnold Schwarzenegger or Kurt Russell. For fighting skill, I'm honestly not sure. My guess might be, well, they have Bruce Lee, maybe Jackie Chan, maybe Jet Li, and maybe Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't know, maybe Chuck Norris too. It's hard to say. I'm not familiar enough with martial arts to know who's the best with those, but those would be my guesses. That's a good reply there. Robin Williams is pretty good, but not sure he's the best of all time. Robin Williams is not on the list, but yes, I would agree. I'm not sure Robin Williams is the best action star of all time. I'm struggling to think if he's even been in an action movie. I'm not sure he has. I guess Hook would probably be the closest thing I can think of to an action movie, but that's not really. That's more like adventure. But let's see. Ross, how do you avoid game spoilers? Do you have any recommendations? Yeah, but you may not like it. I use my list system. I'll just browse through stuff, and then if I see a game that looks interesting, I might watch the trailer or just look at some screenshots, and I think, yeah, this looks promising. I write it down, and I just don't look at it really beyond that. The exception is if it's something where I'm not too worried about spoiling the story. Like, let's say it's like a city building game or management game, and I'm going to be more interested in like the mechanics and like the world. Then I might read some more articles on it and watch more. But if it's something I feel like, oh, this could have like a big plot twist, then yeah, I just don't look at it past that. I have the game. I'll get to it eventually, and it just enters the queue, kind of. Somebody's asking if I've ever played AIM 1 or 2. No, I haven't. And there's also AIM Racing. Those are all on my 2 playlists. So. Would you use an AI to write dialogue for Freeman's Mind if you felt it was accurate enough, or do you consider that cheating? If I thought it could do the job, yeah, I guess why not? I have zero faith in it being able to do that. In fact, I think there was a article a while back where they showed like that ChatGPT tends to use the same 20 jokes or something like that. If I can find that article, I'll put it in the description. So it's like I have, for what I do, I have not been impressed with anything I've seen an AI write. Uh, I think AI has a lot of potential. Like if you're somebody like a coder, okay, maybe AI has a lot more utility to you because you can get it to generate code for like some simpler task or something like that. That makes sense to me. For creative writing, I mean, you just have to be really stuck in a writer's block or something, or not know for AI to do like a better job than you would do. I would think. The what I mean for me, I mentioned before, most of my interest in AI is in multimedia because like I've been using it to kind of generate edges that aren't for outpainting, for generate edges that aren't there for wallpapers. I've gotten kind of decent at it. Finally figured it out. For most things, it can still struggle with like very straight lines. It has trouble with that. Um, or for audio, maybe that'll help with volume balancing. Or I am still waiting on an AI that can remove laugh tracks from audio because that would open up a lot of sitcoms I would want to watch. Because I've grown to kind of hate listening to laugh tracks, so I want an AI that can go through and just mute out or remove like anything that it thinks is laughter, like a laugh track. And then, and yes, I know that will make the sitcom more surreal. I am totally fine with that. But what are some other things I want AI for? Well, I mean, I guess, I mean, not directly, but I think one of the best uses of AI is in medicine, for like earlier detection or being able to, you know, sequence proteins or stuff like that, these patterns that just, it's not going to be, it's going to be either very difficult or maybe impossible for a human to do that sort of sorting. Or I mentioned before, like I've heard of like farms maybe using drones with like a camera on them, like ground drones, and using AI to identify weeds. So it might occasionally have a false positive and accidentally prune the actual crop, but as long as you can keep that number really low, that seems like it could save a lot of work for farmers. So yeah, that sounds like a great use of it. But yeah, for the actual chat and dialogue, I'm sure there's someone out there who finds benefit from this, but it just has like none to me. I mean, I guess the only thing it might be used for is using it as an alternative to search because search is getting so poor these days. But the thing is, the AI is likely to make stuff up too. So it's not like a pure upgrade in my eyes. So yeah, but I'm not against it conceptually. I can't imagine it coming up with like, oh yeah, that was a really great, yeah, that's totally in character, and that's like a really good, funny or interesting line or a great topic. I just can't imagine it doing it better. I mean, at least for what I do. Like, I can't imagine at present day, if it gets to that point, we're going to be so far ahead on things that like, there'll be a lot of things different if AI actually gets to that point. So yeah, I think I mentioned before how I saw the movie Her. And while it wasn't my kind of movie, at the start, he installs this AI, and the first thing it does is it goes and reads through all of his emails and prioritizes which ones he should reply to and writes up replies in his manner of writing and and presents it to him for his approval. I was thinking, so it's like a super secretary. I was thinking, my God, that would be so nice to have something like that. And we're not there. Or if we are there, then the emails you're writing are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like extremely surface level stuff that you're writing about. Uh, do you believe the recent and not so recent backlash against the Stop Killing Games campaign has been due to a number of reasons that may affect game developers' work? Programmers, designers, composers in the real world, such as working in remakes, studios relaunching IP brands, etc. Specifically, the state of the gaming industry lately with so many layoffs. Well, I guess first, I'm not aware of the recent backlash. Feel free to clue me in on that. No, I'm not. I don't think that's it. I think there are a few cases, not many, but like where someone might be working on an online only game. They have no plans for an end of life plan, and the timing of it would make it so that, like, again, let's say it gets released just after the initiative went into effect or something. There could be a few fringe cases, but I think even that isn't the bulk of it. Honestly, I think a whole lot of this is psychological, but it could be for different reasons. One could be some of it. Some people look. There is an overlap of people who tend to be kind of like anti-government versus, I mean, just against the government for everything versus programmers. I've kind of noticed this. I mean that doesn't mean it's not like a one-to-one thing, but I think the ratio is higher. And if you're just against any government intervention, yeah, you could be against this because it does involve government intervention. It would introduce regulation. The second is, I think, again, for some of this could be like knee-jerk response too, where they see this as extra work when it really doesn't need to be extra work for future games, or just so little that it's more like you just need to plan it differently. Because it's like different work isn't the same as like extra. If that's a known requirement, then you might make different decisions on how you design the server. It could be a little bit, but it's so small. I think that's another reason. Honestly, I want to say the bulk reason, I think, is because of people misunderstanding what we're asking for, which means it's partially my fault. Because I think a lot of people jump to being, okay, well, I know a game that this would be hell on earth to implement end of life plan. Therefore, this is completely unreasonable. This person hasn't thought it out at all, yada, yada, and then just jump to that. When it's not retroactive, there's the possibility existing games could get grandfathered in, and this is focusing on future games. But the people who are on that train, it's like we rarely even get to that. We really even get to have a conversation about that, explaining it. I think that's some of it. And for a few cases, I think it honestly might be like a few reactions I've seen that have been so over the top. There's like almost like a resentment from it. They might resent the fact that this is coming from players or consumers and not from within the industry. And that I think it might almost be like a status thing where, like, I don't have the credentials of being a seasoned game developer. I mean, I made extensive mods for the source engine, but to be able to talk, like, you see this in a lot of academic fields, actually, where, like, let's say there was like a medical breakthrough, but because, let's say it wasn't done by someone who has like really esteemed credentials, you could have, or in other research, there can be kind of like some groupthink or elitism that looks at that and just kind of derides it because this person just doesn't have the pecking order standing to be able to propose it, so it gets dismissed outright and pushed back against that. So I think there was a famous example of something like that where, if I'm not getting details wrong, I think the person who basically established the understanding of tectonic plates, of continental drift. My understanding is he was ridiculed by the scientific community when that was introduced. And yeah, that turns out there was a lot to that. So I think it could be something like that too. Like, I think the really just over the top reactions are probably in that camp where there's something psychological going on there. But I think the majority of it is people just, I probably didn't explain it clearly enough, that they're assuming that this would have to be implemented for all games as they exist right now. That's impossible. Therefore, this whole proposal is stupid and reckless, and you need to go back to the drawing board and rewrite this, even though we've already thought, and they don't even get to the point of actually reading the proposal. Or understanding that this is not retroactive. So it's, somebody's saying with YouTube comments, you can sort things. Oh, that'd be helpful. I have trouble with YouTube comments. Going back to the email organization thing, I have trouble with even seeing the YouTube comments that were there like earlier, and then they're just gone like forever. I've seen a few cases where I've scrolled all the way down and it's like, no, it's gone. That comment's gone. And I'm pretty sure the person didn't delete it. So YouTube comments, it's like, I mean, I've seen my comments get just automatically purged sometimes. And oh yeah, to be clear, just as this came back earlier, when I mentioned Pirate Software deleted my comment, he did. He deleted the video the comment was on. So, and then I had a response to that in his video, and then he deleted that video. So the stuff like, if I just make a post and then it doesn't show up, I'm not blaming him on that. Maybe that was him, maybe that was just YouTube. I don't know. But I'm only mentioning ones where, like, no, he deleted it. Or whoever manages his channel did. So. Let's see. So, yeah, I think part of this is a lack. I think the bulk response is I maybe didn't communicate clearly enough that we're trying to like break the cycle and existing games that can be managed one way or another. I think that's the bulk of it. And then the rest it might be psychological or they misunderstood what I said. To this day, the number one misunderstanding we have, something I've never said and have even multiple times tried to say this is not what we want, is we are not asking for endless support. But for whatever reason, I think conditioning from the industry itself, people just jump that, oh, well, if they have to keep the game running, that means the industry has to keep supporting it, and you're asking them to support it endlessly. Therefore, this is crazy and stupid. And I would agree with you if that's what this actually was, which it's not. So it's like the thought of having an end-of-life plan it hasn't even, we've lost so much ground that this thought, it's almost not even in the zeitgeist of gamers now. That's why, like, we're lucky there wasn't an opening even later than this, because I feel like we would have just kept losing ground in people's perception. It's almost like we needed customers who know better that this is possible. Like, who know better that you don't have to have your purchase removed, and companies actually can have end-of-life plans because that's how it used to be, And it doesn't mean we need to go back exactly to that, but we know it's possible. So, okay, more questions. I've been going a while. Okay, so I'll try to be pickier with them. So I was saying with the code SDK for Team Fortress 2 getting officially released for modders, do you see this as a win for the campaign? Because it's something you can point to as an example. Not really. That's a win for preservation and win for modders. TF2 was relatively safe from the get-go, because I think it only used Steam DRM, even on launch. So, and that was I think that was cracked pretty quickly. So from early on, you could have, like, let's say Valve got, Valve servers got hit by a meteor back in 2007 or something. I think early on, you might have still been able to run the game and play with other people in Team Fortress 2, even if that happened. So it was never really, it's what I would call like, I'm not sure the term for this. It's like if you were to do this all completely above board, where you couldn't run TF2 without the authentication, then yes, it would have been technically at risk. But since the DRM was so weak, then it wasn't, in practical terms, it wasn't at risk. So, of course, I guess the reason I don't want to point to that too is because I don't want to mix the messaging. Because, yeah, there's still some people who think you have to give up the source code and you have to give up the intellectual property rights. That's not what we're asking for either. I've seen arguments on that. So I see releasing the source code and the SDK, that's above and beyond for a developer or publisher to do. I, of course, love it when publishers do that. I think it's great, but I don't want us to point to that as the example that we're using if we have better ones, because then it muddies the messaging and thinking, oh, well, now I have to release the source code. Well, yeah, of course, that's stupid. Like, we're not asking for that. We're trying to find a compromise, So, have you played Balatro yet? No, I wasn't really planning to because I'm not really into just card games. Like, the card games I like are stuff that are ones that are kind of like Magic the Gathering clones or remixes or something where there's like lots of art to go with it that I can kind of appreciate and kind of, you kind of get your world building through the cards and seeing all like some cool art. And Balatro looks like, I've barely seen any of it, but it looks like poker with a whole lot of twist to it with the gameplay. And a lot of people have talked about how it's really addictive. Now, I do like really addictive games, but just the premise of it doesn't grab me. I want more, look, if I'm just looking at like a random game, I'm going to gravitate towards the stuff that looks like a fantastic adventure. And it didn't look like a fantastic adventure. It looked like cards with probably a lot of really clever mechanics. So, oh, somebody's saying it has cool music. Okay, I could check out the soundtrack. And I do actually like addictive gameplay, but it's just like, what if it's just like cards, it forces me to like think, well, what else could I be playing instead of this? And so it's not that like I hate the idea. It's just for my taste, there's probably a lot better options. But part of me is also curious to see if I would get addicted to it, because I really don't think I would. But that would be kind of like a pleasant surprise to be proven wrong. But just, I mean, I'm sure it's a great game. People have raved about it, but there's a lot to choose from. So, okay, I'm gonna skip. Okay, well, this is. I'll mention this one quick because this was kind of related. What's your opinion on forced ray tracing? Like, I don't like it, but it's not that simple. It's because I realize forced ray tracing doesn't have to be proprietary. You could have any graphics card vendor making that. A couple things on it. One, I don't like it currently because I feel like the visual gains are so subtle compared to really good raster graphics. And so that means you're giving up a significant amount of your speed, so you can't get as high a frame rate, but it also requires a lot more power. So I'll link to this. I mentioned it before. Somebody did a test comparing power consumption running a game on a 3080 using raster graphics, and then the power consumption running with it ray traced. And it was 180 watts more. It's like, man, that's a lot of power. It's not that ray tracing doesn't look good, it's just that that's subtle. And now, if the game was pure ray tracing, I've heard that can make things a lot easier on developers because then they don't have to do all these different tricks with raster graphics, and it can maybe speed up development and things could still look good. But the thing is, the power just isn't there for that, except for like really, no, it's not there, period. Because even for really much more basic games like Minecraft or Quake 2, more basic visually, they still have to use AI to fill in the gaps on the rays. They're not casting a ray for every pixel out there. But the two things to that. One is that, one, right now, I think the only games I know of that require ray tracing that besides like Quake 2, Minecraft, are the new Indiana Jones game and the new Doom, like the Dark Ages. And those are both published by Bethesda. I would be astounded if NVIDIA hadn't paid money to Bethesda to do that. Because if you're a publisher, you want to sell as many copies of the game as possible. So you want the game to look good, but if you're automatically cutting out a lot of people to being able to play your game by making it mandatory, and it's going to be slower. So I think NVIDIA is known for doing this, like paying a lot of money to make sure that it uses their technology. In fact, I plan to talk about that in the follow-up. There's an example of it. But the other thing is, when I was talking about how pure ray tracing might be easier, right now, the way we're doing it, I thought of a good analogy to it. It's like hybrid cars, because hybrid cars have a full electric engine, and they also have a full internal combustion engine. So it's like twice the complexity, or a lot more of the complexity, than if you had like just an electric car or something like that. So it's current ray tracing in games is kind of like a hybrid car. So they have to do all the raster graphics tricks, and they have to add in the ray tracing implementation. So it's more work for it. And the last thing I was going to end on is recently, we'll see if it's just complete smoke and mirrors, but recently there was an announcement that there's a startup that's made a GPU, the Zeus GPU. Maybe I can have a link to that. That they're supposed to have dev kits by the end of the year, that it allegedly has 10 times the ray tracing performance of NVIDIA's cards. So if we're making a jump like that, okay, maybe it does start making more sense to have just nothing but pure ray traced games. Because, okay, because right now, just the gains versus the drawbacks, it's just not worth it. But if it's 10 times faster, okay, that's a jump that, yeah, maybe that is a paradigm shift. Or maybe they're just making stuff up and it's not really. It is surprising a startup is doing that, because I don't think to even enter the graphics card market, you need to be a major technology company and like have a lot of like really big coffers. Yeah, somebody's saying they'll believe it when they see it. 100%. Because that's, I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, or maybe it is impossible. I don't know. Graphics cards are that complex. But yeah, definitely view that with skepticism until we get some proof. So, but if so, that would be, yeah, maybe I would warm up a lot more to ray tracing if the next video card had 1,000% performance bump or 900% performance bump in ray tracing. I am a product of the military-industrial complex, a core tenet being that creative and liberal applications of money can solve most, if not all, problems. Solve most, not all problems. Would you be willing to accept money in the hopes of speeding up production on the movie, such as hiring a chef and butler to buy time to make the movie? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I had big coffers, I could speed it up a ton. I mean, yeah, that would help too, having a chef and butler, but probably the biggest place that would speed up things up would be kind of the equivalent of, this might even be more than one role, like a secretary and like a project organizer or project manager. Like, I mean, ideally, I'd be more like in the kind of director's seat, being able to figure out how this scene is going to come together, like what we need for that, and then having somebody else contacting lots of different people and like, organizing, okay, they're working on this, okay, this person disappeared on it, so we need to go to this person, and that sort of thing, like keeping up with a lot more managerial task, because that stuff gets time consuming. I mean, I'm okay at it if that's all I'm doing, but if I'm doing multiple things, I'm not the best. Um, so yeah. Oh yeah. Jeez. Okay, my brain. I mentioned earlier when people were talking about the community, the number one things we could use, the number one hangups I'm anticipating once I do spend more time on that, you can get a head start on me if you want, that you could be a scout, technical scout here, is finding out just what's the best affordable facial motion capture, to a lesser extent body motion capture. That there's a few options I think we have for that, but facial motion, that's one. And the second is, excuse me, working out the pipeline for that in Unreal. So let's say you have capture data, and what's the like really going through the process of figuring out, okay, how do we import that and then like have the character play it? So like not just motion capture, but for like the flexes and the face and that sort of thing. And the third one, which ties directly into that, is what software we can use to generate like a lot of character models and faces that still have like a shared facial structure. So in other words, like let's say somebody's like grinning, and you take that animation and you apply it to like one model that was like generated, but you can also take that same animation and so like let's say one's an old man and he grins, but then you could take that to like a young woman and she would still do the same gesture. Yeah, it would look a little different because of the kind of simulated muscles of the face there, but basically you could swap them in and out. Those are like the three things that like, those are the biggest hurdles I'm kind of dreading. And once we figure out how we're doing it, then a lot more progress can happen. So, yeah, and when I say like generate models, there probably are better. Actually, the best one might be in Unreal now. What was it called? Make Human or something? Though I forget what the name of it was. See, I haven't had a chance to look into it. And earlier, this didn't exist. This is another one of the reasons I've been putting this part of it off. That could be a good option. However, is it Make Human? I can't remember. There's something like the Unreal Engine is using the... No, it's not Make Human. Make Humans might be a little too crude. Unreal Face Generation. MetaHuman. That's it. Okay, so maybe MetaHuman is what we need. But in that case, that might have an additional requirement, and that we need to sort of demake the faces a little bit. Because MetaHuman's trying to make them look as like lifelike as possible. That's going to plunge us into the uncanny valley. So we need to maybe like reduce the polygon count on the, and kind of reduce the resolution on the textures a little more. Kind of mess it up to make it look more like a 2000s game model or something like that. So we're in the safe territory. And my wife's knocking on the door, so I should probably wrap this up soon. But so yeah, if you can help, if you want to start doing research on that, like what you think might be best, that would be a big time saver for us. Any one of those things that I mentioned. So yeah, it could be it's already there now. It just wasn't earlier. And in the time I've been working on other videos and I haven't had time to research it again, we have solutions now, which would be wonderful. So, okay, I'll speed round through some more. I'm not planning a game dungeon on Arcanum. That's one of the questions. But I only played like 20 minutes of it. It wasn't quite grabbing me, but maybe I'll give it another shot. Planescape Torment first, though, for big RPGs. That one's next on my list for big. Okay, I'm on the last questions. You can type live ones in the chat. Do the @Ross broadcast, and I'll get to them in a minute. I had not heard about new Hellgate London game being developed. Sure, give it a shot. I mean, I think the IP was solid. I also think it's generic enough that you wouldn't necessarily have to buy the rights to Hellgate London. You could just make a game about the forces of hell coming to Earth that's set in London, you know. But thematically, I thought it was great. I just execution had a lot to be desired. Um, what's your take on EA open sourcing most games of the Command and Conquer franchise? Do you think this is related to the Stop Killing Games campaign? No, on the latter count. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but I doubt it. I think it's awesome. The thing I'm looking forward to the most from that is, I think it was Command and Conquer Renegade. That one was in 3D. So if it's being open source, that means I think we could have a VR mod for it. So I'm hoping somebody does that. You know, gives it like a nice kind of red carpet PC port treat. Well, it's still PC, but modern PC port treatment of Command and Conquer Renegade, especially. I remember the video clips gave me a hard time getting them to look right and the game to look right in Command and Conquer 2, for the Tiberium Wars. But yeah, it's great. I wish this became the standard for companies that aren't doing anything with their old games, you know. Oh, I didn't see this one. Oh, it was posted 16 minutes ago. Okay. Well, or 16 minutes from when I started reading this. Video game. You've made a video on poor design practices, mostly with Windows. What's the single dumbest piece of Windows or general Microsoft design that you've ever encountered or heard of? Worst that they saw was Windows 7 was designed to render the desktop background using one thread per color. So if you had a background set to a solid color, the computer would boot much slower. Oh, wow. I'd have to think about it. I mean, you say dumb. A lot of this stuff is like dumb for the user and user hostile, but it makes some sense for them financially. So I'd have to think about it. Okay. With the recent Dwarf Fortress documentary, what niche or obscure game would you like to see a documentary style behind the scenes of? Oh, man. Geez, I don't know. I'm not really like dying for behind the scenes stuff in most games, but I could also be forgetting one too. Vampire the Masquerade ever gonna get a game dungeon? Maybe. I need to have the process. I'll need more help first so that things are more streamed. Like, okay, there's some game dungeons I feel like I kind of have to do the editing on. There's others I feel like I could write the script, voice it, and then I would want somebody else to take over like 90% of it. Vampire the Masquerade feels more like one of those. So, what do you think about the Frutiger arrow style from the 2000s? I'm not sure exactly which one you mean. I think there's some that were kind of ugly from 2000s, but there were some that were cool too. Oh, that one. It's not my favorite. That one can work, but it's not my favorite. I've seen some Winamp 3 skins that look good with that. So. Let's see. I think we should raid someone, even a random streamer. Okay, you guys be thinking of that quick while I answer the rest of the questions. Give me the exact screen name to type. Because if you don't have them in time, I'm just going to close it. The original developer licensed the IP for Hellgate London again. It's called Hellgate London Redemption, I think. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how much it costs. If it's cheap, you might as well use it. If it's expensive, just make a knockoff. You know, there's nothing about the game that's like, oh, it's such a loss that we can't have the Hellgate London IP specifically. It's kind of like with Dungeon Siege, when I said, like, this could be just any generic fantasy game. There's nothing about Dungeon Siege that you're missing out by not having that exact property other than marketing. You know, that's the only thing. It's so generic. The appeal was just it was just a good game put together, you know, but it wasn't like unique in the intellectual property in particular, or that wasn't its strength at all. Okay, I'm scrolling up a bit. With your self-control, do you have the discipline to be a Queen's Guard or some other soldier or public guard who can't laugh? Oh, if we can't laugh, yeah, I could do that. The part the part that would get to me would be standing there, not moving for hours on end. That's the hard part. But not laughing, I could do that. Yeah. But like this, I would bet money on it. I'd be willing to bet money on it. Raid Quinn69, sure. if he's streaming. Raid MST3K, did they have a stream? Well, they're probably there to watch the video, but you know, or unless they just co-opted the name. Zach Rar, I don't know Zach Rar. Somebody's saying, "Oh, dude, no." Okay, well, I can't tell if that's in response to Zach Rar or not. Okay, regarding the campaign selection, one of the complaints I've seen was that end of life would mean giving up source code and all sorts of IP. Okay, wait, I'll read that in a second. Let the chat vote. Somebody's saying Chud Logic. If he's on, I can do that. Chud Logic is all about drama stuff, though. So Quinn69 is going to be general gaming, I think. Usually. So you take your vote. Which would you rather see? Because I don't want to send a bunch of people there who don't want to be there. So, but... Oh, Zach Rohr is Asmongold. Okay, well, or okay, you guys vote. Figure out which Asmongold, Chud Logic, Quinn69. Those are all options. So, or Zach Rohr. I don't know. I don't know Zach Rohr at all. Okay, campaign reaction. One of the complaints I've seen was that. Okay, I'm scrolling up a bit. Would also mean giving up source code and all sorts of IP. So like it would take many years, come on, many years before that data would be irrelevant and not hurt developers to release, which would mean developers would have to support any games for many years too. No, okay, so there's nuance. The answer is basically no, but there is some nuance here. First off, they wouldn't have to give away anything more than just to run the game in some fashion. And the choice of how that is being done is left up to the developer. Like, see, here's the thing. What you just said, this applies to basically every game. Like, if you have a copy of Grand Theft Auto, you pop it in a console, let's say you can run it offline, well, guess what? Now you're in possession of some of their code, and that is a potential security risk for future games that use that code. So this is a standard almost every video game developer already does, just so you can run the game. In order to not have that, they're basically asking for a special exception that 99% of developers have never had and don't have. So you're kind of, it's being looked at, because the only ones that, I think the only ones that don't would be like streaming only games. So in other words, yes, you do not have access to the code of those, but you still, for almost all these games, you still have access to the client. And there is the server code that the company is using. Now, releasing that is probably the easiest way for them to be compliant, but that's not what they have to do. They could code something else. Yes, that would be more work. And yes, that's why this is more future oriented, because if that's a known requirement, then it doesn't have to be that much more work. Now, the thing for intellectual property, no, they're not. Here's the thing. This is why our wording in the Citizens Initiative was so careful, because it said that the game needs to be in a reasonably working state. So how that happens is entirely up to the developer. We're not saying you need to release the source code. We're not saying you need to release server binaries. That is the developer's choice how they want to handle that. Maybe they just want to patch the client with different code. Fine. And even so, whatever intellectual property they want to keep in-house, they can keep in-house as long as they don't rob the customer. The other aspect of that is, lost my train of thought for a second. Geez, I had it. Okay, well, there are two more things I want to say on it. One is, if we're talking about the intellectual property rights, the only rights the customer would get from this is the right to run their individual copy of the game that they paid for. That's it. They do not have the right to resell it. They do not have the right to make a new game off of it. I mean, or use the same. It's like I said in my video, Game as a Service is fraud. Just because you bought a copy of Grand Theft Auto does not mean you own the rights to the Grand Theft Auto franchise. This would not change any of that. So, we're not... Basically, to object on these grounds, it's like saying there is no way we find acceptable that we will let you run your game, because we're leaving the entire choice to the developer. And if the developer can do anything they want to leave the game in a working state, and that's not good enough, then they're basically saying that nothing will ever be good enough for them to comply. And in which case, well, we kind of have to push past it, because that mentality is getting games destroyed. And the industry has already done this in the past. Now, where we get into nuance, and there is some validity here, is if, let's say they have a game, like an MMO that they shut down, but they have another MMO that they're still running, and that uses the exact same engine, and that has, let's say there's vulnerabilities in it, and it's going to share all the same vulnerabilities. Then they might be worried, okay, if we release the server code for that, then that's going to expose all sorts of vulnerabilities in our game that we're still supporting. And that's going to create a nightmare for us. And that, for some cases, yes, that is true. I think that's not most games, though. And moreover, that's for games that have already been made. If they know that's going to be a risk from the get-go, they're going to think, okay, well, we're going to have to modify our security protocols from the old one. Or when we do have an end-of-life plan, we're just, you know what? We're not even going to, we're just going to put this, we're going to put in different code for how to host the game on the consumer's end than we're using for our main servers, just so there's no breadcrumbs for them to follow on this. They get to decide. We're putting everything we're putting the how to do this entirely on the developer side, because we're not trying to dictate how they make their game. We're trying to dictate that the consumer doesn't get robbed. Any path they take to get there is fine by us. So this thing will wild me up. Well, it's an argument I've seen, and I don't get to talk back most of the time. So this time I get to talk back. So I'm letting you know how this goes up. Okay, so do people decide who to raid to? Well, you say your go-to greasy burger type of video game when you just want to unwind or have fun. I talked about that earlier. I don't have a general given one. I sometimes, if I don't want to think too much, I might do like kind of platformers or first-person shooters or something like that. But okay, so do we have any consensus? Zach, Forza, and Quinn, there's not much consensus here. Okay, we have one for Quinn 69. We'll do Quinn 69. All right, enjoy, Quinn. Did I do it right? Or that channel has a follower or subscriber only chat. Okay, so we can't do Quinn. Okay, let's try Zach Rar then. I don't know who this is. It's saying yeah, it worked. Okay, well, we'll do Zach Roar too then, since people are still here. Oh yeah, I should end. Okay, so for YouTube, so you don't have to see me screw around on Twitch. That's it. I'll see you next time. Game Dungeon coming for sure, and more after that. And try to get to Freeman's Mind and other stuff. Keeping busy. I'll see you later.